Rain hammered the cracked pavement of South Boston like bullets trying to bury themselves in concrete. 19-year-old Vivian Mercer counted her steps home from another closing shift at Rosie's Diner near the harbor, her sneakers soaked through, her body aching from 12 hours of carrying trays and swallowing insults from drunk college kids who treated her like furniture. The streets felt empty at midnight, neon bar signs flickering like dying stars, distant sirens wailing through the fog, steam crawling from subway grates like something desperate to escape the earth. She heard the footsteps behind her before she saw them. 3 men. Then the black SUV sliding to the curb. Then hands, rough, chemical-smelling, covering her mouth before she could scream. They threw a bag over her head that reeked of gasoline and old smoke. Hours later, tied to a steel chair in an abandoned warehouse that smelled like rust and rotting fish, Vivian learned the truth about her dead father. The quiet university professor who spent his evenings reading poetry and fixing broken furniture, and the Russian crime syndicate that wanted her blood as payment for his betrayal. They were going to sell her, but then gunfire tore through the warehouse walls like the world splitting open, and a man stepped through the smoke wearing a black coat streaked with blood and rain, gray eyes cold as winter steel, and said, "My name is Lucien Vale. If they touched you, this city burns tonight. If you want to see how far darkness can pull someone before they stop fighting it, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels." The warehouse floor was slick with something Vivian didn't want to think about. Blood, probably. Oil. Maybe both. Her wrists burned where the zip ties had cut into skin, and her head throbbed from whatever they'd used to knock her half unconscious in the SUV. She could taste copper in her mouth, her own blood from biting her tongue when they'd shoved her into the chair. The man standing in front of her now wasn't one of the 3 who'd grabbed her off the street. This one was older. 50, maybe. Graying beard, eyes like dirty ice. He wore an expensive suit that didn't belong in a place like this, and when he smiled, Vivian felt her stomach turn over. "Your father," he said in a thick Russian accent, "was a very stupid man." Vivian tried to speak, but her throat was raw. She coughed instead, and the sound echoed off the corrugated metal walls. Professor Elliot Mercer. The man circled her slowly, his shoes clicking against the concrete. Respected academic, published 3 books on Eastern European history, taught at Boston University for 22 years. He stopped behind her, and she felt his breath on her neck. Also worked for Lucien Vale. Past intelligence. Helped dismantle our operations in Providence and Hartford and Newark. Cost us millions. Cost us lives. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice came out broken, barely a whisper. The man laughed, a sound like gravel scraping metal. "Your father died 6 months ago, yes? Heart attack in his office?" He came around to face her again. "No, Devochka. We poisoned him, slowly, over many weeks. He knew it was coming. He said nothing to protect you." The words hit her like a fist to the chest. Vivian felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of this man. What do you want from me?" "Payment." He crouched in front of her, his face inches from hers. "Your father owed us a debt. Since he cannot pay, you will." "I don't have money. Not money." His smile widened. "You." The warehouse door screeched open, and 2 more men walked in carrying duffel bags. They didn't look at Vivian. They moved like workers on a shift, unloading equipment, checking weapons. One of them lit a cigarette, and the smoke drifted toward the ceiling in lazy spirals. "There are buyers," the Russian continued, standing again. "Men who pay well for girls like you. Young, educated, American. You will be on a plane to Dubai by morning." Vivian's breath came faster. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. She pulled against the restraints, but they didn't budge. The chair didn't move. "Please. Your father should have thought about this before he betrayed us." The Russian turned away, nodding to one of the men by the door. "Prepare her for transport." That's when the first gunshot rang out. The man with the cigarette dropped like someone had cut his strings. Blood sprayed across the floor in a wide arc. The second man grabbed for his gun, but another shot, louder this time, closer, tore through his shoulder and spun him sideways into a stack of wooden pallets. The Russian dove behind a metal shipping container, shouting something in his language that Vivian didn't understand. Then the door exploded inward, not opened. Exploded. The hinges tore free from the frame, and the entire sheet of corrugated steel crashed to the concrete with a sound like thunder inside a metal drum. Smoke poured through the opening, thick, black, chemical. Vivian couldn't see anything, couldn't breathe. Her eyes burned. She coughed and choked and tried to twist away from the chair, but the restraints held. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming through the smoke like something inevitable. A figure emerged. Tall, maybe 6'2". Black coat that hung to his knees soaked through with rain. Dark hair pushed back from a face that looked carved from stone. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, gray eyes that didn't blink. He held a gun in his right hand and blood dripped from his left. Not his blood, Vivian realized. He looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then he turned toward the shipping container where the Russian had taken cover. "Victor," the man said. His voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely terrifying. "Come out." A burst of gunfire answered him. Bullets tore through the smoke, sparking off the metal walls, ricocheting into darkness. The man in the black coat didn't flinch. He stepped sideways, raised his gun, and fired 3 times in rapid succession. Silence. Then a wet, choking sound. The Russian stumbled out from behind the container, clutching his stomach. Blood poured between his fingers. He tried to say something, but only managed a gurgling noise before he collapsed face first onto the concrete. The man in the black coat walked past him without a second glance. He stopped in front of Vivian's chair, holstered his gun, and pulled a knife from inside his coat. The blade caught the dim light. Silver, clean, sharp. He cut through the zip ties in 2 quick motions, and Vivian's arms dropped to her sides, numb and useless. "Can you stand?" She tried. Her legs buckled immediately, and she would have hit the floor if he hadn't caught her. His hands were steady, impersonal. He pulled her upright like she weighed nothing. "Who?" "Later." He glanced toward the shattered doorway. "We need to move." Vivian heard voices outside, shouting, more gunfire, distant but getting closer. The man guided her toward a side exit she hadn't noticed before, partially hidden behind a stack of rusted oil drums. He moved like someone who'd memorized the layout in advance, someone who didn't leave anything to chance. They stepped out into the rain. The cold hit her like a slap. Vivian gasped, stumbled, but the man kept her moving. A black sedan idled 20 feet away, headlights off. The back door swung open as they approached, and the man pushed her inside before sliding in beside her. "Drive," he said to the figure in the front seat. The car lurched forward, tires spitting gravel, and Vivian finally let herself collapse against the leather seat. Her whole body shook. Adrenaline, shock, cold, all of it crashing down at once. The man beside her pulled off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm, heavy, smelled like gunpowder and expensive cologne. "My name is Lucien Vale," he said, his voice still that same controlled quiet. "Your father worked for me." Vivian turned to look at him. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, lines around his eyes, tension in his jaw. He couldn't have been much older than 30, but he carried himself like someone who'd lived 3 lifetimes already. "Worked for you," she repeated slowly. "Doing what?" "Intelligence, strategy. He helped me dismantle trafficking operations run by the Petrova Syndicate." Lucian's gray eyes met hers. "They found out. They killed him for it. Tonight, they were going to kill you. So you just, what, showed up?" "I had people watching you. After your father died, I knew they'd come for you eventually." He leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes briefly. "I was too late to stop the kidnapping, but I made sure they wouldn't get you out of the city." Vivian pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders. Her mind felt like it was moving through fog, trying to piece together information that didn't make sense. "My father was a professor. He taught history. He fixed furniture on weekends. He read poetry. He also passed me intelligence on Russian mob operations for 6 years." Lucien opened his eyes again. "Your father wasn't a violent man, but he understood what needed to be done. He saved lives. Probably hundreds. Maybe more." The car turned onto a highway, picking up speed. Rain streaked across the windows in horizontal lines. Vivian watched the city lights blur past and felt like she was leaving her entire life behind in that warehouse. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. We're somewhere safe. Lucien glanced at her. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face, but it was gone before she could be sure. My house. The estate sat 30 minutes outside Boston, hidden behind stone walls and iron gates that opened automatically as the sedan approached. Vivian stared through the rain-streaked window at a mansion that looked like it belonged in a European postcard. 3 stories of gray stone and arched windows, surrounded by manicured lawns and ancient oak trees that bent under the weight of the storm. Security lights flooded the driveway as they pulled up to the entrance. 2 men in dark suits emerged from the shadows, both carrying rifles. They nodded to Lucien as he stepped out of the car, then took up positions on either side of the front door. Lucien offered Vivian his hand. She hesitated, then took it. Her legs still felt unsteady, but she forced herself to stand straight, to keep her chin up. She'd been kidnapped, nearly sold into trafficking, and rescued by a man who apparently ran his own criminal organization. She wasn't going to fall apart now, not where anyone could see. The inside of the mansion was even more impressive than the outside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that probably cost more than Vivian had made in her entire life. Everything looked expensive and cold and perfectly arranged. A woman in her 40s appeared from a side hallway, wearing a housekeeper's uniform. She took one look at Vivian, soaked, shivering, still wearing Lucien's blood-stained coat, and her expression softened. "Draw a bath," Lucien said. "Find her clean clothes. Make sure she eats something." "Yes, sir." The woman gestured for Vivian to follow, but Vivian stayed where she was. "I want answers," she said, looking at Lucien. "Real ones, not just pieces." Lucien studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "Tomorrow, after you've rested." He turned toward the staircase. "You're safe here. That's all you need to know tonight." "Am I?" Vivian's voice came out sharper than she intended. "Safe? Or am I a prisoner in a nicer cage?" Lucien stopped halfway up the first step. He looked back at her, and for the first time, Vivian saw something other than control in his expression. Exhaustion. Maybe even regret. "You're not a prisoner," he said quietly, "but you're not safe anywhere else. So this is where you'll stay until I fix the problem." "How long will that take?" "As long as it takes." Then he was gone, disappearing up the stairs with the same measured calm he'd shown in the warehouse. Vivian stood in the entrance hall, dripping rainwater onto marble floors worth more than her entire apartment building, and felt the full weight of reality settle onto her shoulders. Her father was dead. Murdered. Not by a heart attack, but by poison administered slowly over weeks. He'd worked for a crime boss. He'd fought against human traffickers. He'd kept it secret from her for 6 years. And now she was living in the home of that same crime boss, surrounded by armed guards, cut off from everything she'd known. The housekeeper cleared her throat gently. "This way, miss." Vivian followed her up the stairs, down a long hallway lined with oil paintings of men who looked severe and powerful, into a bedroom that was bigger than her entire apartment. The 4-poster bed looked like something out of a period drama. The bathroom attached to it had a marble tub the size of a small swimming pool. "I'll bring you something to wear," the housekeeper said. "And some food. You must be starving." Vivian realized she was. She hadn't eaten since her lunch break at the diner, which felt like a lifetime ago now. "Thank you." The woman smiled, genuinely warm, like Vivian was a guest instead of whatever she actually was, and disappeared into the hallway. Alone, Vivian locked the door, stripped off her soaked clothes, and climbed into the bath the housekeeper had drawn. The water was hot enough to hurt, but she didn't care. She sank down until it covered her shoulders and closed her eyes. She cried for the first time since the warehouse. Not because she was scared, not because she was hurt, because her father had died keeping secrets from her, and she'd never know if he'd done it to protect her, or because he didn't trust her with the truth. Vivian woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a few seconds, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The warehouse, the Russian, Lucien Vale stepping through smoke like something out of a nightmare. She sat up slowly. Someone had left clothes folded on the chair beside the bed. Black jeans, a gray sweater, clean underwear, still in packaging. On the nightstand sat a tray with coffee, toast, scrambled eggs, and fresh fruit. She ate mechanically, not tasting anything, then dressed and stepped into the hallway. The mansion felt even bigger in daylight. Vivian followed the sound of voices down the main staircase and through an arched doorway into what looked like a formal dining room. Lucian sat at the head of a long table, dressed in a black shirt and slacks, reading something on a tablet. Two other men sat near him, both in suits, both watching Vivian as she entered. Lucien glanced up. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Vivian took the chair closest to the door, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. The two men exchanged looks, then stood and left the room without a word. Lucien set the tablet down. "You slept." "Not much." "That's normal. Adrenaline crash. It'll get better in a few days." "Will it?" Vivian met his eyes. "Because I don't feel like anything's going to get better." Lucien poured himself coffee from a silver pot and took a long drink before answering. "Your father came to me 7 years ago," he said. He'd been researching Russian organized crime for a book. He stumbled onto something real, a trafficking network operating out of Boston. He brought it to me instead of the police. "Why?" "Because the police were involved. Because judges were involved. Because the Petrova Syndicate had corrupted half the city, and going through official channels would have gotten him killed." Lucien leaned back in his chair. "He asked me to help. So I did." Vivian tried to reconcile the image of her father, the man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd made her pancakes every Sunday morning, who'd cried at her high school graduation, with the man Lucien described. "He never told me." "He wasn't supposed to. That was the agreement. He provided intelligence. I acted on it. No one ever connected him to the operations." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Until they did?" "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Vivian looked around the dining room, at the expensive furniture, the art, the windows overlooking manicured gardens patrolled by armed guards. "What are you?" she asked quietly. "Exactly?" Lucien didn't answer right away. He studied her like he was deciding how much truth she could handle. "I run an organization," he said eventually. "We control territory. We manage interests. We eliminate threats." "You're a crime boss." "Yes." "And my father worked for you." "Yes." Vivian felt something shift inside her chest. Anger, maybe, or grief, or some combination of both. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I want to leave." "You can't." "You said I wasn't a prisoner." "You're not." Lucien's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "But if you leave this house, you'll be dead within 24 hours. The Petrova Syndicate knows who you are now. They know your father betrayed them. They'll send people after you, and next time, I won't be there to stop them. So what am I supposed to do? Just stay here forever? Until I end this?" "And what?" Lucien stood, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. He was taller than she'd realized, had to be 6'3" at least. And when he looked down at her, Vivian felt the full weight of whatever he was. "Until I burn the Petrova Syndicate to the ground," he said quietly. "Until every person responsible for your father's death is erased. Until you're safe." "I didn't ask you to do that. Your father did. Before he died. He made me promise." Vivian felt tears burn her eyes again, but she blinked them back. "How long?" "Weeks, maybe months." "And then what? Then you go back to your life, if that's what you want." He turned away, picking up the tablet again, dismissing her, but Vivian didn't move. "My father," she said. Did he know that they were poisoning him?" Lucien's shoulders tensed. He set the tablet down again, but he didn't turn around. "Yes." "How long?" "The last 3 weeks." "And he didn't tell me." "He didn't want you involved." "But I am involved," Vivian said, her voice rising. "I'm so involved that I got kidnapped and almost sold to traffickers. So maybe he should have told me. Maybe he should have given me a choice." Lucien finally turned to face her. "He was protecting you. He was lying to me." Sometimes those are the same thing. Vivian stared at him, at this man who'd pulled her out of a warehouse, who'd killed people without hesitation, who'd brought her to a mansion filled with armed guards, and expensive art and secrets buried under marble floors. "I don't know if I can forgive him," she whispered. You don't have to, Lucian said. But you need to understand that everything he did because he loved you. The words hit her harder than anything else. Vivian felt her knees go weak, felt the weight of the last 12 hours finally crush down on her all at once. She sank back into the chair, her head in her hands. Lucien didn't move, didn't offer comfort, just waited. After a long moment, Vivian looked up. Who killed him? Do you know? Viktor Sokolov. He's the Petrova Syndicate's enforcer, the man in the warehouse. Is he dead? Yes. Good. Something flickered in Lucian's expression. Surprise, maybe, or approval. He studied her again, and Vivian had the sense that he was revising his assessment of her in real time. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone who'd break? Maybe I will, Vivian said. But not yet. Bought. The days blurred together. Vivian learned the rhythms of the estate quickly. Breakfast at 7. Security briefings at 9. Lucien meeting with his men in a room she wasn't allowed to enter. Lunch at noon. Afternoons filled with silence, punctuated by phone calls Lucien took behind closed doors. Dinners were the worst. Lucien insisted she eat with him, always at the long dining table, always with guards stationed outside the doors. He didn't talk much. Neither did she. But the silence felt heavy, charged with things neither of them said. On the fourth night, Vivian broke first. Tell me about my father. Lucien looked up from his plate. They were eating some kind of pasta that probably cost more than Vivian made in a week at the diner. She'd barely touched it. What do you want to know? Anything? Everything. She set her fork down. You knew him for 6 years. I thought I knew him my whole life, but apparently I didn't. So tell me who he really was. Lucien considered this for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. He was brilliant, careful, meticulous. He'd spend weeks researching a single operation before giving me anything. He never took unnecessary risks. That sounds like him. He talked about you constantly. Vivian felt her throat tighten. What did he say? That you were too smart for the diner, that you deserved better, that he'd failed you by not being able to afford to send you to college. Lucien's gray eyes held hers. He was wrong about that last part. You didn't need him to send you anywhere. You would have gotten there yourself. How do you know? Because you're still here, still fighting. Most people would have shattered by now. Maybe I'm just good at hiding it. Maybe, but I don't think so. They fell into silence again. Outside, rain started falling, softer than the storm the night of the warehouse, but steady. Vivian watched water streak down the windows and felt something shift inside her. Why did you make that promise? She asked quietly. To protect me? Lucien didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was carefully neutral. Your father was the closest thing I had to a friend. That's rare in this life. When he asked me to look after you, I gave him my word. And you always keep your word? Always. Vivian believed him, which was terrifying because it meant she was putting her life in the hands of a man who killed people for a living. Can I ask you something? She said. You can ask. How old were you when you took over? Lucien's expression hardened. 23, after my father was killed. How long ago? 7 years. Vivian did the math. Lucien was 30, only 11 years older than her, but he moved through the world like someone ancient, someone who'd already seen everything and stopped being surprised by it. Do you ever wish you could walk away? She asked. Every day. The honesty of it shocked her. Why don't you? Because I'm good at this. Because people depend on me. Because if I walk away, someone worse takes my place. He picked up his wine glass, studied the dark liquid inside. And because I don't know how to be anything else. Vivian felt something dangerous stir in her chest. Not fear, not anger, but something closer to understanding. Maybe even sympathy. That's sad, she said quietly. Lucien smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Yes, it is. On the 7th night, everything changed. Vivian was reading in the library, a massive room lined floor to ceiling with books that probably cost more than most people's houses, when she heard shouting, not normal shouting, panic shouting. She dropped the book and ran into the hallway. Guards sprinted past her toward the front of the house, weapons drawn. Somewhere, an alarm started wailing. Lucien appeared at the top of the main staircase, already moving, already in control. "Get her to the safe room," he barked at one of the guards. "What's happening?" Vivian demanded. "They found us." Lucien descended the stairs in 3 long strides. "Move. Now." The guard grabbed Vivian's arm, but she twisted free. "Who found us?" Gunfire answered her question. The front windows exploded inward, spraying glass across the marble floor. Vivian screamed and dropped to the ground, covering her head. Bullets tore through the entrance hall, sparking off stone, punching holes in priceless paintings. Lucien pulled her to her feet and shoved her toward the guard. "Take her downstairs. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone." "Lucien, go!" The guard practically dragged Vivian down a side hallway, through a door she'd never noticed before, down a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. Behind them, the gunfire intensified, shouting, breaking glass, the sound of the house tearing itself apart. They reached a reinforced steel door at the bottom of the stairs. The guard punched a code into a keypad, and the door hissed open, revealing a small room with concrete walls and no windows. A safe room. "Inside," the guard said. Vivian hesitated. "What about Lucien?" "He can handle himself. You can't." The guard pushed her inside and slammed the door shut. Vivian heard the locks engage, heavy, mechanical, final. Then silence. She sank to the floor, her back against the cold concrete wall, and listened to the battle raging somewhere above her head. Vivian counted her breaths in the darkness. In, out, in, out. The concrete walls muffled most of the sound, but she could still hear it, the dull percussion of gunfire, the crash of something heavy hitting the floor above, shouting that rose and fell like waves breaking against rock. She pressed her palms flat against the cold floor and tried to slow her racing heart. How long had it been? 10 minutes? 20? She'd lost track. The overhead light flickered once, then died completely. Emergency backup lights kicked in, dim red strips along the baseboards that cast everything in the color of old blood. Vivian stood and felt her way along the wall until she found what she was looking for. A metal cabinet bolted to the concrete. She pulled it open. Inside, bottled water, protein bars, a first aid kit, and a handgun. Vivian stared at the weapon for a long moment. She'd never fired a gun in her life. Her father had hated them, refused to keep one in the house even after her mother died and they'd moved to a worse neighborhood. She reached out, then pulled her hand back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She grabbed a bottle of water instead and sat back down, her spine against the wall, and waited. The gunfire stopped. That was somehow worse than the noise. Vivian held her breath, listening. Footsteps overhead, heavy boots, multiple people moving fast. She heard voices but couldn't make out words. Then silence again. She counted to 100, then 200. Nothing. The door lock disengaged with a sharp metallic click that made her jump. Vivian scrambled to her feet, backing into the corner farthest from the entrance. The door swung open slowly. Lucien stood in the doorway, blood streaked across his face, his shirt torn at the shoulder. He looked at her for exactly 2 seconds, then nodded once. "It's over. Come on." Vivian didn't move. "How do I know it's really over?" "Because I'm still breathing." He held out his hand. "And because if it wasn't over, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you." She took his hand. His grip was steady, but she felt him trembling, just barely, just enough to notice. Adrenaline crash, probably. Or exhaustion. Maybe both. He led her back up the narrow staircase, through the side hallway, into the entrance hall. The mansion looked like a war zone. Glass everywhere. Bullet holes punched through walls and paintings. One of the crystal chandeliers had fallen and shattered across the marble floor in 1,000 glittering pieces. Blood. She tried not to look at the blood. 4 bodies lay near the front entrance, all dressed in black tactical gear. None of them were Lucien's men. "How many?" Vivian asked quietly. 8! We got all of them." Lucien guided her around the corpses without breaking stride. "Lost 2 of mine, another 3 wounded." "I'm sorry." He didn't respond. They climbed the main staircase. Vivian saw more bullet holes in the walls, more blood on the expensive carpet runner. At the top, Lucien turned left instead of right, leading her to his office. a room she'd never been inside before. It was smaller than she expected, darker. One wall was entirely glass, overlooking the gardens. The others were lined with filing cabinets and bookshelves. A desk sat in the center, covered in papers and 3 different laptops. Lucienne closed the door behind them and locked it. Sit. Vivian took the leather chair across from his desk. Lucien poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey from a crystal decanter and downed it in one swallow. He poured another, then finally sat. Someone gave them our location, he said. His voice was flat, controlled, but she heard the rage underneath. This house has been secure for 7 years. No one outside my inner circle knows where it is, and tonight, 8 men showed up with blueprints and our security protocols. A leak. A traitor. Lucien set the glass down hard enough that Vivian flinched. Someone I trust. Someone close. How do you know? Because they knew exactly where the security cameras were. They knew which entrance had the weakest defenses. They knew the guard rotation schedule. He leaned back in his chair, his gray eyes cold as winter ice. That's not intelligence you get from surveillance. That's information you get from the inside. Vivian felt something twist in her stomach. What are you going to do? Find them and make an example. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so certain, made her realize exactly what kind of man she was dealing with. Not someone who threatened, someone who delivered. In the meantime, Lucien continued, we're leaving, tonight, before whoever sold us out gets another chance. Leaving where? I have a safe house in the mountains, western Massachusetts, off the grid. Only 3 people know about it. His jaw tightened. And I'm about to find out if one of them is the traitor. They left at 3 in the morning. Vivian sat in the back of an armored SUV with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see out. Lucien drove. One of his men, Marcus, a stocky guy with a scar across his left eyebrow, rode shotgun with a rifle across his lap. No one talked. The city gave way to suburbs, then forest. The highway turned into a 2-lane road that climbed steadily into hills that became mountains. Rain started falling again around dawn, turning the world gray and indistinct. They stopped once, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Marcus went inside to pay cash while Lucien filled the tank. Vivian watched through the tinted glass as an old man in a trucker hat gave them both long looks before climbing back into his pickup and driving away. He saw us, she said when they got back in the SUV. Doesn't matter, Lucien replied. By the time anyone comes looking, we'll be gone. They drove for another hour before turning onto a dirt road barely wide enough for the vehicle. Trees pressed in from both sides, branches scraping against the windows. The road climbed steeply, then leveled out into a clearing. The safe house looked more like a hunting cabin, weathered wood, stone chimney, small porch with 2 rocking chairs that had seen better days. But Vivian noticed the steel-reinforced door, the security cameras hidden in the eaves, the generator humming quietly behind the structure. Home sweet home, Marcus muttered, climbing out. Lucien killed the engine and turned to Vivian. Stay close. Don't go outside without me or Marcus. Don't use your phone. Don't contact anyone. Understand? I don't have my phone. Your people took it at the mansion. Good. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly comfortable. Wood floors, stone fireplace, furniture that looked handmade but sturdy. A loft bedroom accessible by a ladder. Small kitchen with propane appliances. No television. No internet. Marcus checked every room methodically, then nodded to Lucien. We're clear. Set up perimeter surveillance. I want motion alerts on every approach. Copy. Marcus disappeared outside, leaving Vivian alone with Lucien for the first time since the attack. She stood in the middle of the main room, suddenly aware of how small the space was, how close they were going to be for however long this lasted. Lucien moved to the fireplace and started building a fire. His movements were efficient, practiced. Within minutes, flames were crackling against dry wood, filling the room with warmth and flickering light. There's food in the kitchen, he said, without looking at her. Canned goods, dry pasta, rice. We'll make it work. For how long? However long it takes. That's not an answer. Lucien finally turned to face her. In the firelight, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The blood still dried on his neck where he'd missed it while cleaning up. I don't have an answer, he said quietly. because I don't know who I can trust anymore. And until I do, we're ghosts. The first 3 days passed in tense silence. Lucian spent most of his time on encrypted phone calls, his voice low and dangerous as he interrogated his organization from a distance. Marcus patrolled the perimeter, checking cameras, running scenarios. Vivian tried to stay out of the way. She cooked what she could from the limited supplies. She read books from a shelf in the loft, old paperbacks with cracked spines and yellowed pages. She watched through the windows as rain turned to sleet, then back to rain again. And she watched Lucien slowly come apart. It was subtle at first, the way he'd pause mid-sentence during phone calls, the way his hand would tighten into a fist, then slowly release, the way he'd stare at nothing for minutes at a time, his mind clearly somewhere else. On the fourth night, she found him standing on the porch at 2 a.m, rain soaking through his shirt, just staring into the darkness. "You're going to catch pneumonia," she said from the doorway. He didn't turn around. "Can't sleep." "Neither can I." She stepped out onto the porch beside him. The rain was cold, but not freezing. It felt clean somehow, like it could wash away the last 2 weeks if she stood in it long enough. "I know who it is," Lucian said quietly. Vivian's breath caught. "Who?" "My uncle, Daniel Vale, my father's younger brother." Lucian's voice was completely flat. "He's been with me since I took over. Handled finances, logistics, outside contracts. I trusted him with everything." "Are you sure?" "The timing matches, the information matches. And when I called him this morning to ask about a shipment that never existed, he gave me details that only the person who leaked our location would know." Lucian finally looked at her. "He's been working with the Petrova Syndicate for at least 6 months, maybe longer." "Why?" "Money, power, revenge for not getting the organization when my father died." He turned back to the darkness. "Pick one. They're all probably true." Vivian felt anger rise in her chest. Not for herself, but for him. For the betrayal. For the weight of carrying an empire on his shoulders while the people closest to him planted knives in his back. "What are you going to do?" "What I always do." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Handle it." "How?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. They stood in the rain together, not talking, not touching, just existing in the same space while the world tried to tear itself apart around them. "My father used to say something," Vivian said eventually. "When things got bad. When my mother died and the bills piled up and he couldn't figure out how to keep going." "What did he say?" "That sometimes the only way forward is straight through the worst of it. That you can't go around, you can't go back. You just have to walk into the fire and hope you come out the other side." Lucien looked at her for a long moment. "Your father was a smart man." "He was a complicated man. Those usually go together." Vivian smiled despite everything. Despite the rain and the cold and the fact that she was standing in the middle of nowhere with a crime boss who'd killed people to protect her. Despite all of it, she smiled. And Lucien smiled back. It was small, barely there, but it was real. And then, on the 5th day, Marcus found the surveillance equipment. Vivian was making coffee when she heard him shouting. She ran outside to find him standing near the tree line, holding something small and metallic in his hand. Lucien appeared from inside the cabin, moving fast. "What is it?" "Camera." Marcus held it up. "Wireless, battery-powered, hidden in the trees about 50 yards out." "How long has it been there?" "No way to tell without taking it apart. Could be days, could be weeks." Lucien took the device and examined it closely. His expression didn't change, but Vivian saw his knuckles go white around the metal casing. "Sweep the entire perimeter," he said. "Every tree, every rock. If there's one, there's more." Marcus nodded and disappeared into the forest. Lucien crushed the camera in his fist, then dropped the pieces into the mud. "We need to leave," he said. "Now." "They know we're here?" "They've known since we arrived." He turned back toward the cabin. "Pack light. 5 minutes." Vivian ran inside and grabbed what little she had. The clothes from the mansion, a jacket Marcus had given her, a bottle of water. She was back outside in 3 minutes. Lucien and Marcus were loading gear into the SUV with quick, efficient movements. No wasted motion, No panic. Just professionals doing what they'd been trained to do. "Where are we going?" Vivian asked. "Away from here." Lucian slammed the rear hatch closed. "That's all that matters." They were halfway to the SUV when the first shot rang out. Marcus dropped instantly, blood exploding from his chest. He hit the ground hard and didn't move. Lucian grabbed Vivian and shoved her behind the vehicle as more shots tore through the clearing. Bullets sparked off the SUV's armored panels, shattered the cabin windows, punched holes in the propane tank that immediately started hissing gas into the air. "Stay down!" Lucian pulled his own weapon and returned fire toward the tree line. Vivian pressed herself flat against the muddy ground, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She couldn't see where the shots were coming from. Couldn't see anything except dirt and grass and Marcus's body 5 feet away, blood pooling around him in the rain. The shooting stopped. Silence fell over the clearing like a weight. Lucian didn't move, didn't lower his weapon. His breathing was controlled, measured, but Vivian saw the tension in every line of his body. "Come out, nephew." The voice came from the forest. Male, older, carrying easily across the open space. Lucian's jaw clenched so hard Vivian heard his teeth grind together. "Daniel!" he called back. "I was hoping you'd show up." Laughter echoed from the trees. "I'm sure you were. Always were a sentimental boy. Like your father." "My father built something. You're just tearing it down." "Your father was weak. He could have owned this entire coast, but he settled for scraps because he was afraid of getting his hands dirty." The voice moved, circling maybe or getting closer. Vivian couldn't tell. "I'm not afraid. You're working with the Russians." "I'm working with whoever pays. That's business, Lucien." "And nothing personal. You got my people killed. You sold out my location to traffickers. You betrayed everything my father gave you." Lucian's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. "That's personal." Another laugh. "Your father didn't give me anything. He left everything to you. His spoiled, arrogant son who didn't earn it, didn't deserve it, and certainly didn't appreciate it. So yes, Lucien, I'm taking what should have been mine from the beginning. By killing me. By replacing you. The Petrova Syndicate needs a partner in Boston. Someone competent. Someone who understands that this business isn't about honor or loyalty. It's about profit." A pause. "They offered me your territory in exchange for you and the girl. Seemed like a fair trade." Vivian felt ice flood her veins. Lucien's hand tightened on his weapon. "You're not getting her." "Then you're both dying here." More gunfire erupted from multiple directions. At least 3 shooters, maybe 4. They'd been waiting, Vivian realized. Watching. Giving Daniel time to talk while they got into position. Lucien fired back, but they were pinned, trapped between the SUV and the cabin with no cover and nowhere to run. The propane tank exploded. The blast threw Vivian sideways into the mud. Her ears rang. She couldn't hear anything except a high-pitched whine that seemed to come from inside her own skull. Heat washed over her, followed by smoke thick enough to choke on. Lucien grabbed her arm and hauled her to her feet. His mouth moved. He was shouting something, but she couldn't hear the words. He pointed toward the forest on the opposite side of the clearing, then started running, dragging her with him. Bullets chased them across open ground. Vivian felt one pass close enough to her head that the air pressure made her hair move. Another hit the ground inches from her left foot, kicking up mud. They reached the tree line and plunged into darkness. Branches tore at Vivian's face and arms. Roots tried to trip her. Lucien didn't slow down, didn't let go of her wrist, just kept pulling her deeper into the forest while gunfire and shouting echoed behind them. They ran until Vivian's lungs burned and her legs threatened to give out. Then they ran further. Finally, Lucien pulled her down behind a massive fallen tree covered in moss and rot. They pressed themselves flat against the wet ground, breathing hard, listening. Footsteps. Multiple people, spreading out, searching. Lucien put his finger to his lips. Vivian nodded. They waited. A man passed within 10 feet of their hiding spot, rifle raised, eyes scanning the forest. He wore tactical gear and a radio headset. Vivian held her breath, not moving, not blinking. The man kept walking. After an eternity, the sounds of the search party faded into the distance. Lucien slowly sat up, his back against the fallen tree. Blood ran down the left side of his face from a cut above his eyebrow, either from the explosion or a branch. Vivian couldn't tell. "Marcus," she whispered. Dead before he hit the ground. Lucian's voice was hollow. He had a wife, 2 kids. I'm sorry. So am I. They sat in silence while rain dripped through the canopy above, and somewhere in the distance, men with guns searched for them in the dark. We can't stay here, Lucian said eventually. They'll keep looking until they find us. Where do we go? There's a town about 15 miles east. We get there, we can disappear for a while. 15 miles? Vivian looked at her mud-caked clothes, her torn jacket. On foot? On foot. And if they catch us? Lucien met her eyes. In the dim light filtering through the trees, his expression was unreadable. They won't. How do you know? Because I'm not letting them take you. The way he said it, fierce, absolute, almost desperate, made something shift in Vivian's chest. Not fear, not gratitude. Something more complicated. Something she didn't have words for yet. Why? She asked quietly. Why does it matter so much? You could have left me in that warehouse. You could have sent me away after the mansion attack. Why are you doing this? Lucian looked away. Because I promised your father. That's not the only reason. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Vivian reached out and touched his arm, just her fingers against his wrist, barely contact at all. But he went completely still, like she'd pressed a knife to his throat instead of offering comfort. Lucien, we need to move, he said, standing abruptly. Before they circle back. He offered her his hand. After a moment, she took it. They started walking east, deeper into the forest, leaving behind the burning cabin and Marcus's body and any illusion that they could outrun what was coming for them. They walked for hours. The rain never stopped. Vivian's feet went numb inside her soaked sneakers. Her jeans clung to her legs like wet cement. Every breath hurt, pulled from lungs that burned from cold and exhaustion. Lucien didn't slow down, didn't complain, just kept moving with that same controlled efficiency he brought to everything, like walking 15 miles through a freezing forest at night was just another task to complete. Around midnight, they stopped beside a creek. Lucien knelt and splashed water on his face, washing away blood and mud. Vivian collapsed against a tree and closed her eyes, too tired to care about the cold anymore. Drink something, Lucien said, offering her his cupped hands filled with creek water. Is it safe? Safer than dehydration. She drank. The water tasted like minerals and earth, but it was cold and clean, and her throat was so dry she didn't care. They rested for 10 minutes. Then Lucien stood and offered his hand again. Come on, we're close. How do you know? I can hear the highway. Vivian listened. He was right. In the distance, barely audible under the rain, she heard the faint whisper of traffic. They walked another hour before the trees thinned and they emerged onto a 2-lane highway cutting through the mountains. No streetlights, no buildings, just asphalt and darkness. Lucien checked both directions, then started walking along the shoulder, staying close to the tree line in case they needed to disappear fast. Headlights appeared around a curve, bright, sudden, moving fast. Lucien grabbed Vivian and pulled her into the trees. A semi-truck roared past, followed by 2 cars. They waited until the road was clear again, then continued walking. After another mile, they saw lights ahead. Not much, just a scattering of buildings that might have been a gas station, a diner, maybe a motel. There, Lucien said. That's our chance. They approached carefully, staying in the shadows. The town, if you could call it that, consisted of exactly 6 structures. A combination gas station and convenience store, a diner that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 70s, a motel with a flickering vacancy sign, and 3 houses set back from the road. The gas station was closed. The diner had 2 cars in its parking lot. The motel office light was on. Lucien pulled cash from his pocket, somehow still dry despite everything, and counted it quickly. Enough for a room, maybe food if we're careful. They'll ask for ID. I have ID. It's not mine, but it'll work. Of course he did. They crossed the highway and approached the motel. Up close, it looked even worse. Peeling paint, broken gutter, parking lot cracked and full of weeds. But it had doors that locked and beds that were probably dry. And right now that was enough. Lucien told Vivian to wait outside while he dealt with the clerk. She leaned against the building and watched rain create rivers in the cracked asphalt. Her whole body trembled from cold and exhaustion. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt warm, Couldn't remember what it was like to not be running from something. The office door opened. Lucien emerged with a key attached to a plastic tag with 7 written in faded marker. "Last room on the end," he said. "Let's go." The room was exactly what Vivian expected. 2 double beds with thin comforters, carpet that smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke, a bathroom with rust stains in the tub, a television bolted to the wall that probably hadn't worked in years, but the door had a lock, and a deadbolt, and a chain. Lucien secured all 3, then checked the window. Locked, curtains drawn. He moved through the room methodically, checking every corner, every shadow, every possible entry point. Finally satisfied, he sat down on the bed closest to the door. "Get some sleep," he said. "We'll figure out the next move in the morning." Vivian stood in the middle of the room, dripping water onto the disgusting carpet, and felt something break inside her. "I can't do this anymore." Lucien looked up. "Can't do what?" "This. Running, hiding, watching people die." Her voice cracked. "Marcus had a wife, kids, and he's dead because of me. Your mansion was destroyed because of me. How many more people are going to die because you're trying to protect me?" "That's not—" "It is." Tears burned her eyes. "Your uncle was right. Trade me for peace. Give them what they want. At least then it stops." Lucien stood slowly, his expression unreadable. "You think that's what I should do?" "I think it's what makes sense. And you think the Petrova Syndicate would honor that deal? That they'd take you and leave my organization alone?" Vivian didn't answer. "They wouldn't," Lucien said quietly. "They'd take you, kill you, and keep coming for me anyway, because this stopped being about your father's betrayal the moment I pulled you out of that warehouse. Now, it's about me. About sending a message that Lucien Vale can be broken, can be beaten." He closed the distance between them. "So, no, I'm not trading you for anything. Not for peace, not for my territory, not for my life." His gray eyes held hers. "And if that makes me selfish, if that gets more people killed, then I'll carry that. But I'm not giving you to them." "Why?" Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. "Why does it matter so much?" Lucien's jaw worked like he was physically trying to keep words from escaping. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Because you're the first person in 10 years who looks at me and sees something other than a monster." The confession hung between them like smoke. Vivian felt her breath catch, felt something inside her chest crack open. She'd spent 2 weeks hating him, fearing him, trying to keep distance between herself and the violence that followed him like a shadow. But standing here now, watching this man who'd killed without hesitation admit that he was human underneath all the blood and control, she closed the distance, kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative. It was desperate and raw and tasted like rain and smoke and survival. Lucien went rigid for half a second. Then his hands were in her hair, pulling her closer, kissing her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vivian saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. "Fear. This is a mistake," he said. "Probably. You should stay away from me. Too late for that." Lucien's thumb traced her jawline, his touch surprisingly gentle. "I can't protect you and—" He stopped, started again. "If I let myself feel this, if I let you become more than just a promise I made to your father, then I'll make mistakes. I'll prioritize wrong, and we'll both end up dead. Or maybe," Vivian said quietly, "you'll finally have something worth staying alive for." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her again, slower this time, but no less intense. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "Neither do I. Everything I touch turns to blood and ashes. Then maybe it's time to build something that doesn't burn." Lucien pulled back just far enough to look at her. "You're not what I expected," he said for the second time since they'd met. "What did you expect? Someone who'd run from this?" "From me." Vivian smiled, small, sad, real. "I tried, but I think I stopped running somewhere between the mansion and here." They stood in the middle of that cheap motel room, soaked and exhausted and covered in mud, and something fundamental shifted between them. No more pretending this was just about a promise. No more pretending they could keep distance. Whatever this was, whatever it was becoming, it was real now. And that made everything more dangerous than before. Vivian woke to gray morning light filtering through thin curtains and the smell of coffee. She sat up slowly. Her whole body ached. Bruises had bloomed across her arms and legs from the explosion, from running through the forest, from everything. Lucien sat at the small table by the window, 3 burner phones spread out in front of him. He'd cleaned up somehow, face washed, hair combed back with water, wearing the same clothes but looking more composed than he had any right to. "There's coffee," he said without looking up, "and donuts. Best I could do from the gas station." Vivian got up and poured herself a cup from the ancient coffee maker. The liquid was burnt and bitter, but it was hot and caffeinated, and right now that was enough. "What are you doing?" she asked, nodding at the phones. Reaching out, carefully, he picked up one of the burners. "I need to know how much of my organization is still loyal and how much has gone over to Daniel." And mixed results. He set the phone down, rubbed his eyes. About half are solid. The other half either aren't answering or are giving me answers that sound rehearsed. What does that mean? It means I'm about to lose everything my father built. His voice was flat, controlled, but she heard the pain underneath. Unless I act fast. How? Lucien looked at her for the first time since she'd woken up. "The Petrova Syndicate made Daniel an offer. They want me dead and you delivered. In exchange, he gets my territory and their support." "You already told me that." "But Daniel needs to prove he can deliver. Which means he's going to make a move soon, probably within the next 48 hours. Lucien leaned back in his chair. "So we're going to give him what he wants." Vivian felt ice spread through her chest. "What do you mean?" "We're going to let him think he's won." Lucien's gray eyes were calculating, cold. "We're going to set a trap, and when Daniel and the Petrova Syndicate walk into it, we're going to burn them all. Using me as bait." "Yes." Vivian set her coffee down carefully. Her hands were shaking again. "And if it goes wrong?" "Then we die together." He said it simply, honestly, like he was commenting on the weather. "But if it works, this ends, Daniel, the Russians, all of it." She should have been terrified, should have said no, should have demanded he find another way. But Vivian thought about her father, poisoned slowly, dying in his office while grading papers, keeping secrets until his last breath. She thought about Marcus, dead before he hit the ground. She thought about every person who'd been hurt or killed because of her. And she realized something. She was tired of running, tired of being the victim, tired of letting other people decide her fate. "What do you need me to do?" she asked quietly. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, like she'd just passed some test she didn't know she was taking. "I need you to trust me," he said, "completely. Even when it looks like I've betrayed you. Even when every instinct says to run." His voice dropped. "Can you do that?" Vivian thought about the man who'd pulled her from a warehouse, who'd protected her despite the cost, who'd kissed her last night like she was the only solid thing in a world built on quicksand. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." "Then here's what's going to happen." One of the burner phones rang. Lucien grabbed it immediately, his expression sharpening. "Talk to me." He listened, his jaw tightened. "When?" Another pause. "I understand." "No, stay where you are. I'll call back in 1 hour." He ended the call and crushed the phone in his fist, shattering it. "What?" Vivian asked. "The Petrova Syndicate just made their move." Lucien stood, already moving, already planning. "They've offered a ceasefire, complete amnesty, all debts forgiven." "That's good, isn't it?" "In exchange for you, alive, delivered to a location of their choosing within 72 hours. Vivian's breath stopped. "And if you don't?" "They declare open war. On me. On everyone still loyal to me. They burn Boston to the ground until there's nothing left." He turned to face her, and Vivian saw something in his expression that terrified her more than anything else she'd witnessed in the last 2 weeks. Conflict. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucien Vale didn't know what to do. "How many people?" she asked quietly. "How many would die if you refuse?" "Hundreds, maybe more." And if you give me to them, just you. The math was simple, brutal, undeniable, one life against hundreds. Vivian felt something cold and sharp settle into her chest. She walked to the window and looked out at the gray morning, at the rain still falling, at the highway that could take her anywhere if she was willing to walk far enough. Then give me to them, she said without turning around. No. Lucien, no. He was beside her in 3 strides, his hand on her shoulder, turning her to face him. I told you, I'm not trading you. Then you're sentencing innocent people to death. There are no innocent people in my world. His control finally cracked. Everyone I know, everyone loyal to me, they chose this life. They knew the risks. You didn't. You got dragged into this because your father tried to do the right thing. I'm not letting you pay for that. So your people pay instead? Lucien didn't answer. Vivian pulled away from him, her mind racing. The promise to trust him. The instinct screaming at her to do what was right, even if it killed her. The impossible weight of being worth more than hundreds of lives. There has to be another way, she said. There is. Lucien's voice was cold again, controlled. The emotion locked back down where no one could see it. The trap. The plan. But it means gambling everything on a single move. And if we fail, everyone dies anyway. Yes. Vivian closed her eyes. Thought about her father walking straight through the fire. Thought about becoming someone who could survive in a world built on blood and secrets. When she opened her eyes again, her decision was made. Tell me the plan, she said. All of it. And then let's end this. Lucien looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing someone completely different from the terrified girl he'd cut free from a chair 2 weeks ago. You understand what you're volunteering for? I understand that I'm done being rescued. I understand that if I'm going to survive in your world, I need to stop being a victim. She met his eyes. So yes, I understand. Now tell me how we kill them all. For the first time since the mansion burned, Lucien smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who'd just realized his opponent had made a fatal miscalculation. Here's what's going to happen, he said, pulling her close, his voice dropping to something intimate and dangerous. You're going to walk into their trap willingly. You're going to let them think they've won. And when they're celebrating, when they're confident and careless, that's when we strike. And if they kill me before we get the chance, they won't. How do you know? Lucien's hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Because you're the only leverage they have against me. They need you alive, at least until they don't need me dead anymore. How comforting. I'm not here to comfort you. His voice was gentle despite the words. I'm here to keep you alive, to turn you into someone who can't be broken, to make sure that when this is over, you walk away stronger than you were before. Vivian felt tears burn her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. And what if I don't want to be stronger? What if I just want to be normal again? Normal died the moment they threw you in that SUV. Lucien's forehead rested against hers. I'm sorry, but you can't go back. You can only go forward. Through the fire? Through the fire. They stood like that for a long moment. 2 people who'd been thrown together by violence and circumstance, who probably shouldn't have survived this long, who definitely shouldn't be planning to walk directly into an ambush with nothing but hope and rage to protect them. But Vivian realized something as she stood there in Lucien's arms, in a cheap motel room in the middle of nowhere, soaked and bruised and absolutely terrified. She wasn't the same person who'd walked home from the diner 2 weeks ago. That girl was gone. And whoever was left, whoever was standing here now, was someone capable of surviving what came next, even if it killed her. Tell me everything, she said again. And don't leave anything out. If I'm walking into hell, I want to know exactly what it looks like. Lucien pulled back just enough to look at her. And in his gray eyes, Vivian saw something she'd never expected to see from a man like him. Pride. All right, he said quietly. Here's how we're going to burn your father's killers to the ground. And he told her. Every detail, every risk, every possible way it could go wrong and get them both killed. And when he was done, Vivian realized with absolute certainty that there was no going back, no safety, no rescue, only forward, into the fire. The meet was set for 48 hours later at a shipping terminal on the outskirts of Providence, neutral ground, or as neutral as anything could be when the Petrova Syndicate was involved. Vivian spent those 2 days learning how to die. Not literally, but close enough. Lucian drilled her on every detail: where to stand, how to react, what to say if they asked questions, what to do if things went wrong before his people could get into position. "They'll search you," he said, watching her practice walking across the motel room floor like she was heading to her execution instead of a trap. "Thoroughly, so you can't carry anything that might give us away. No wire. Too risky. They'll find it and kill you on the spot." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You're going in blind and unarmed. The only weapon you have is time." "How much time?" 3 minutes. From the moment you walk into the terminal to when my people breach. 3 minutes where you're completely alone with them." Vivian felt her stomach twist. "What if they decide to kill me immediately?" "They won't. They need to confirm you're actually you, not a decoy. They need to make sure I'm not hiding somewhere watching. They need to feel like they've won." Lucian's gray eyes held hers. "Use that. Make them talk. Make them feel powerful. The longer you keep them distracted, the better positioned we'll be." "And if your people don't make it in 3 minutes?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. They went over the plan again, and again, until Vivian could recite every detail in her sleep, until she stopped flinching when Lucian described what the Petrova syndicate would do to her if the trap failed. On the second night, lying in bed staring at water stains on the ceiling while Lucian kept watch by the window, Vivian finally asked the question that had been eating at her since the cabin. "Do you think we'll survive this?" Lucian was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said eventually. "I've orchestrated ambushes before, walked into traps knowing exactly how to spring them, but this one's different." "How?" "Because usually I'm risking myself, not someone I—" He stopped, started again. "Not someone who matters." Vivian turned to look at him. He was silhouetted against the window, backlit by the neon motel sign outside. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she heard the tension in his voice. "I matter to you," she said quietly. Not a question. "Yes." "Since when?" "Since you kissed me and didn't run away after." He turned from the window. "Since you chose to walk into this knowing you might not walk out. Since you stopped being something I was protecting and became someone I—" He cut himself off. Vivian sat up. "Someone you what?" Lucian crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed. In the dim light, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features, the weight he carried that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. "Someone I can't afford to lose," he said finally, "and that makes me weak, makes me vulnerable, makes me exactly the kind of target my enemies have been waiting for." "Then why not walk away? Give me to them. Save yourself." "Because I already told you, I don't make that trade." His hand found hers in the darkness. "And because maybe being weak for the right person is better than being strong and completely alone." Vivian's breath caught. "Lucian, get some sleep," he said, standing abruptly. "Tomorrow we move. And once this starts, there's no stopping it." He went back to the window, back to watching the parking lot for threats that might never come. Vivian lay back down but didn't sleep. Just listened to the rain and the highway and her own heartbeat counting down the hours until she walked into hell. They drove to Providence in a stolen sedan, different vehicle, different plates, nothing that could be traced back to Lucian's organization. Vivian sat in the passenger seat wearing clothes Lucian had bought from a discount store 2 towns over, dark jeans, black jacket, gray shirt. Nothing memorable, nothing that would stand out in surveillance footage. "My people will be in position by the time you arrive," Lucian said, eyes on the road. Rooftop across from the terminal. Service entrance on the east side. 2 vehicles blocking the only road out. "What if the Petrova syndicate brings more people than you're expecting?" "They will. That's why we're not trying to win a straight fight. We're trying to create chaos. Separate them. Make them panic." He glanced at her. "And while they're panicking, you run." "Where?" "North wall. There's a door that'll be unlocked. My people will be waiting on the other side." "And you?" "I'll be exactly where I need to be." That wasn't an answer, and they both knew it. They drove in silence for another hour. The city rose around them. Providence wasn't as big as Boston, but it had the same feeling, the same weight. Like too many people living too close together, all of them keeping secrets. Lucien pulled off the highway and navigated through industrial streets lined with warehouses and shipping facilities. Everything looked abandoned, rust and broken glass and weeds growing through cracked pavement. He stopped the car 3 blocks from the terminal. This is as close as I can get without being seen. He turned to face her. You walk from here. Take your time. Don't look nervous. They're watching. Vivian's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her thighs to steady them. I'm terrified. Good. Use it. Fear keeps you sharp. Lucian reached across and cupped her face. But don't let it control you. The moment you freeze, they win. What if I can't do this? You can. I've seen you survive things that would have broken most people. You're stronger than you think. Vivian wanted to believe him. Wanted to feel that strength he kept insisting she had. But sitting in this car, 3 blocks from men who wanted to kill her, all she felt was hollow. Lucian leaned in and kissed her, not desperate like before, slower, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. 3 minutes, he whispered. That's all I need. Can you give me 3 minutes? Yes. Then go. And Vivian? What? Don't die in there. I'm not good at funerals. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the cold. The walk to the terminal felt like walking underwater. Every step too slow, too loud. Her breath came in shallow gasps that fogged in the freezing air. She forced herself to slow down, to breathe normally, to look like someone who'd accepted her fate instead of someone about to spring a trap. The terminal came into view, a massive structure of corrugated steel and concrete, surrounded by rusted shipping containers stacked 3 high. Floodlights cut through the darkness at irregular intervals, creating pools of harsh white light separated by deep shadows. 2 men stood at the main entrance. They watched Vivian approach. Both held rifles. Neither spoke. When she was 10 feet away, one of them stepped forward. Arms up! Vivian raised her arms. The man patted her down, rough, thorough, invasive. His hands lingered longer than necessary, and Vivian felt bile rise in her throat. But she stayed still, stayed quiet. She's clean, the man called over his shoulder. The second man spoke into a radio. A burst of static, then a voice Vivian couldn't understand. Inside. They grabbed her arms, one on each side, and walked her through the entrance into the terminal. The interior was cavernous, empty. High ceilings supported by steel beams. Concrete floors stained with oil and rust. More shipping containers arranged in rows, creating corridors and dead ends. In the center of the space, portable floodlights had been set up in a rough circle, illuminating an area about 20 feet across. 3 people stood in that circle of light. The first was a woman, late 40s, blonde hair pulled back severely, wearing an expensive suit that looked wrong in a place like this. She watched Vivian approach with cold calculation. The second was a younger man, early 30s, with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He held a pistol loosely at his side. The third person made Vivian's breath stop. Daniel Vale. Lucienne's uncle looked exactly like the photograph she'd seen in the mansion. Silver hair, expensive clothes, the kind of face that belonged in corporate boardrooms, not shipping terminals. He smiled when he saw her. Miss Mercer, he said warmly, like they were meeting at a cocktail party. Thank you for joining us. The guards released Vivian's arms and stepped back, leaving her standing alone in the circle of light. Where's Lucien? The woman asked. Russian accent, cold voice. He's not coming, Vivian said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. He told me to come alone. Daniel laughed. Did he now? And you just agreed? Walked into certain death because my nephew asked nicely? He didn't ask. He told me it was the only way to end this. End this, the woman repeated. She circled Vivian slowly, studying her like a specimen. You really believe that? That we'll honor a ceasefire? I believe you want Lucien more than you want me, and that giving you me is the only way to buy time. The woman stopped in front of her. Smart girl. Yes, we want Lucien Vale very badly. He's been a problem for too long, disrupted our operations, killed our people, cost us millions. She leaned in close. But we also know that killing you destroys him in ways a bullet never could. So really, Miss Mercer, you're worth more to us than any ceasefire. Vivian felt ice flood her veins. Then why the negotiation? Why not just kill me and declare war? Because we wanted to see if Lucien Vale, the great crime lord, the untouchable king of Boston, would actually sacrifice someone he cares about to save his empire.
The woman's smile was razor sharp. And he did, which means he's not as strong as everyone thinks. Daniel stepped forward. Where is he, Vivian? I don't know. Liar.
I'm not lying. He dropped me 3 blocks from here and drove away. I haven't seen him since. Daniel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded to the man with the scar. Check the perimeter. If Lucien's here, I want him found. The man spoke into his radio. Vivian heard movement outside. Vehicles, footsteps, voices shouting coordinates. She counted seconds in her head. 30 seconds. 1 minute. Lucien had said 3 minutes. She needed to keep them talking for 2 more. Can I ask you something? She said, looking at Daniel. What? Why? Lucien trusted you. He gave you everything. Why betray him? Daniel's expression hardened. Because everything should have been mine. My brother built that empire, and when he died, it should have passed to me. Not to his arrogant son who thought he could change the rules, who thought he could make our world cleaner, safer. He stepped closer. Lucien wanted to be different, wanted to be better. But this business doesn't reward better. It rewards ruthless, and I'm more ruthless than he'll ever be. So you partnered with the people who killed his father? The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's face went pale. The woman's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. And Vivian realized with absolute horror that she'd said something she wasn't supposed to know. What did you say? Daniel's voice was soft, dangerous. Nothing. I didn't. The people who killed his father, Daniel repeated. He turned to the woman. Did you tell her that? No? Then how does she know? The woman's eyes narrowed. Lucien must have told her before he sent her here. Why would he tell her that? Daniel grabbed Vivian's arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Why would he give you information about who killed his father unless... He stopped, looked at Vivian, looked at the woman. And Vivian saw the exact moment he figured it out. This is a trap, he said quietly. What? The woman's hand moved to her weapon. She's bait. Luce didn't send her to surrender. He sent her to distract us while he... Gunfire erupted from every direction. The floodlights exploded, plunging the terminal into darkness. Bullets tore through metal and concrete. Vivian dropped to the ground and covered her head as chaos detonated around her. Someone grabbed her arm and hauled her to her feet. She couldn't see who, couldn't see anything, just heard shouting and gunfire and the high-pitched whine of her own pulse in her ears. She ran, didn't know which direction, didn't care, just ran toward where she thought the north wall should be, where Lucien had said the exit would be waiting. More gunfire. Someone screamed. Something exploded. A vehicle maybe, or a fuel tank. An orange light bloomed across the terminal, throwing everything into sharp relief for exactly 2 seconds before darkness swallowed it again. Vivian slammed into a shipping container hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. She stumbled sideways, found a gap between 2 containers, and squeezed through. Behind her, she heard Daniel shouting orders. And then, worse, she heard Lucien's voice. Vivian! North wall! Move! She followed his voice through the darkness, through the maze of containers, her hands scraping against rust and sharp metal edges. Blood ran down her palms, but she didn't stop. The north wall appeared ahead, concrete and steel and a door that should have been unlocked. Vivian grabbed the handle and pulled, locked. No, no, no! She pulled harder. Nothing. Behind her, footsteps, getting closer. She turned and pressed her back against the door, breathing hard, searching the darkness for any sign of Lucien's people. A figure emerged from the shadows. The woman from the circle of light, still holding her weapon, still perfectly composed despite the chaos. Did you really think it would be that easy? She asked, walking slowly toward Vivian. That Lucien Vale could just walk into our trap and win? It's not your trap, Vivian said. It's his. Is it? The woman smiled. Then where are his people? Where's the rescue you were promised? Vivian's breath came faster. The woman was right. The door was locked. No one was coming. Something had gone wrong. Lucien! She screamed. Lucien, the door! A gunshot. Pain exploded through Vivian's left shoulder, spinning her sideways. She hit the concrete hard, her vision going white with agony. Blood, hot and wet, spread across her shirt. The woman stood over her, weapon trained on Vivian's head. He's not coming, she said quietly. Because we didn't just set a trap for you, Miss Mercer. We set a trap for him. And while you were playing bait, my people were surrounding his extraction team. She crouched beside Vivian. Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate this? That we wouldn't plan for every contingency? Vivian tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. She coughed, spitting crimson onto the concrete. Where is he? If he's smart, running. If he's foolish? The woman's smile widened. Probably already dead. No. The word screamed through Vivian's mind even as her body went cold. Not Lucien, not after everything. I'll give him credit, the woman continued, standing again. He almost had us. The simultaneous assault, the extraction team, the chaos protocol. It was well planned. But Daniel knew his nephew too well, knew exactly how he'd structure the operation. And we planned accordingly. She raised her weapon. Any last words? Vivian's hand found something beside her on the concrete. Metal, sharp. A piece of debris from the explosion. Not much of a weapon, but it was all she had. She lunged. The makeshift blade caught the woman across the forearm. Not deep, but deep enough. The woman screamed and dropped her weapon. Vivian scrambled forward, grabbed the gun, and fired. The first shot went wide. The second hit the woman in the chest. She fell backward, eyes wide with shock, blood blooming across her expensive suit. Vivian dropped the weapon and clutched her shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. Her whole arm felt like it was on fire. Her vision swam. She heard shouting. More footsteps. People converging on her location. The north wall door slammed open. A man Vivian didn't recognize grabbed her arm, the good one, thankfully, and hauled her through the opening into darkness beyond. Move, move, move! They ran through a narrow corridor between buildings, then out into an alley where an SUV sat idling with its back door open. Someone shoved Vivian inside. The vehicle lurched forward before the door even closed. Vivian collapsed against the seat, pressing her hand against her bleeding shoulder. Her head felt light, disconnected, like her consciousness was floating somewhere above her body. "Where's Lucien?" she managed to ask. The man in the driver's seat didn't answer. "Where is he?" Still nothing. Vivian tried to sit up, but pain lanced through her shoulder and she fell back. The world was going gray around the edges, tunneling. "Stay with us," someone said. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "We're almost there." "Where?" "Safe house. We'll patch you up." "Lucien." "Not now. Focus on staying conscious." But Vivian couldn't focus, couldn't think. The adrenaline was wearing off, and with it, whatever had been keeping the pain at bay. She closed her eyes and fell into darkness. When Vivian woke, she was lying on a couch in a room she didn't recognize. Sunlight streamed through windows covered with newspaper for privacy. Her shoulder was bandaged, professionally, tightly, with surgical precision. An IV drip ran into her right arm. A woman sat in a chair across from her. Older, 60 maybe. Gray hair pulled back in a bun. She wore reading glasses and was scrolling through something on a tablet. "You're awake," the woman said without looking up. "Good. You've been out for 16 hours. Vivian tried to sit up. Her shoulder screamed in protest, but she forced herself upright anyway. "Where am I?" "New Haven, safe house. You're lucky. The bullet went through clean. No major damage. You'll be sore for a while, but you'll live." "Where's Lucien?" The woman finally looked at her. Her expression was carefully neutral. "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean exactly that. Our team extracted you as planned, but Lucien was supposed to meet us at the secondary rendezvous point 6 hours ago." She set the tablet down. "He never showed." Vivian felt like she'd been shot again. "So we don't know. He could be hiding. He could be injured. He could be..." The woman stopped. "We don't know." "Then we need to find him." "Not with a bullet wound in your shoulder, we don't. You need to rest. Heal. Let us handle this." "Handle what? You just said you don't know where he is." The woman stood and walked to the window, peering through a gap in the newspaper. "The Petrova Syndicate is claiming victory. They're saying Lucien Vale is dead, that they found his body in the terminal." She turned back to Vivian. "They're circulating photos." Vivian's blood went cold. "Show me." "I don't think..." "Show me!" The woman hesitated, then picked up the tablet and handed it over. Vivian looked at the screen. The photograph showed a body lying in a pool of blood inside the shipping terminal. Face down. Dark hair. Black coat. The same coat Lucian had been wearing, but she couldn't see the face. "That's not proof," Vivian said, her voice shaking. "You can't see his face. It could be anyone." "That's what we're trying to determine, but Vivian—" "He's alive." She said it with absolute certainty. Had to believe it or everything would fall apart. "He's alive and he's hiding, and we need to find him before they do." The woman took the tablet back gently. "Even if he is alive, you're in no condition to help. Rest. I'll let you know if we hear anything." She left the room, closing the door softly behind her. Vivian sat alone on the couch, staring at her bandaged shoulder, and felt something inside her chest crack open. The trap had failed. Lucien was missing, possibly dead. The Petrova Syndicate was still operational, and she was stuck in a safe house with a bullet wound and no way to help. She'd walked into hell like Lucien had asked, but she hadn't walked out. 3 days passed. No word from Lucien. No confirmation that he was alive. No bodies recovered that matched his description, but also no sightings. Nothing. Just silence. Vivian healed slowly. The woman, whose name was Catherine, changed her bandages twice a day and monitored her for infection. The wound was clean, but it hurt like hell every time Vivian moved wrong. On the 4th morning, Catherine brought her a phone. "It's for you." Vivian took it carefully. "Hello. Vivian Mercer." The voice was male, unfamiliar. Russian accent. "Who is this?" "My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I have something you want." Vivian's hand tightened on the phone. "Lucien." "Yes. He's alive. Injured, but alive, for now." "What do you want?" "The same thing we've always wanted. You. In exchange for him." The man's voice was calm, professional. "You have 24 hours to surrender yourself at a location we'll provide. If you don't show, Lucien Vale dies. Slowly. How do I know he's really alive?" A pause. Then a voice came through the phone, rough, exhausted, but unmistakably Lucien's. "Don't do it, Vivian, don't!" The sound of impact, a sharp gasp, then the Russian voice again. "You have your proof. 24 hours. We'll send coordinates." The line went dead. Vivian sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Catherine appeared in the doorway. "What did they say?" "They have him." Vivian's voice was hollow. "They want me. 24 hours. You can't go." "I have to." "It's a trap. They'll kill you both." "Maybe." Vivian set the phone down and looked at Catherine. "But if I don't go, they'll definitely kill him. So I don't really have a choice, do I?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "He wouldn't want you to do this. I know. But I'm not doing it for what he wants. I'm doing it because—" Vivian stopped, swallowed hard. "Because I can't let him die for me. Not after everything. Even if it means dying yourself? Even then." Catherine studied her with something that might have been respect. "You've changed," she said quietly. "The girl Lucien pulled out of that warehouse wouldn't have said that." "That girl's dead." Vivian stood, testing her shoulder. It hurt, but it held. "This is who's left." The phone buzzed. A text message with coordinates and a time. Midnight. An abandoned factory on the outskirts of Hartford. Vivian memorized the location, then deleted the message. "I need weapons," she said. "And a vehicle. And whatever body armor you can find that won't restrict my movement." "You're really doing this?" "Yes." Catherine nodded slowly. "Then you'll need more than weapons. You'll need a plan." "I have one." "What is it?" Vivian met her eyes. "Walk in, trade myself for Lucien, and whatever happens after that—" She touched her bandaged shoulder. "I'll figure it out." It wasn't a good plan. It barely qualified as a plan at all. But it was all she had. And somewhere in a factory in Hartford, Lucien Vale was bleeding and broken because he'd tried to save her. Now it was her turn to save him, even if it killed her. Catherine disappeared for an hour. When she returned, she brought a duffel bag filled with equipment. Vest, 2 pistols, extra magazines, first aid kit. She set the bag on the couch. And one more thing. She pulled out a small device, barely larger than a button. Tracker. Stick it under your skin before you go in. We'll be able to follow you if they move locations. They'll search me. Not surgically. This goes under the skin on your rib cage. It'll hurt, but it'll be invisible to pat-downs and metal detectors. Vivian took the tracker. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might not work. You might both die anyway. I know. Then why do it? Vivian thought about her father, about Marcus, about everyone who'd died because of her, about Lucian, who'd kept his promise even when it cost him everything. Because, she said quietly, someone has to walk through the fire. And this time, it's my turn. Catherine helped her prep, inserted the tracker with quick, efficient movements that left Vivian gasping in pain, fitted the body armor beneath her clothes, checked the weapons, and showed her how to clear jams if something went wrong. You're not trained for this, Catherine said. You're going to be terrified. You're going to want to freeze. Don't. Keep moving. Keep breathing. And remember, dead heroes don't save anyone. I'll remember. At 11 p.m., Vivian climbed into the SUV Catherine had prepared. The coordinates were already programmed into the GPS. 1 hour to Hartford, 1 hour to prepare herself for whatever came next. Catherine leaned in through the driver's window. If you make it out alive, she said, tell Lucien he owes me for this. I will. Vivian started the engine and pulled out into the night. The drive felt like it took seconds and hours simultaneously. Her mind raced through scenarios, through possibilities, through all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. But she kept driving. The factory appeared ahead, skeletal and dark against the night sky. Broken windows. Rusted metal. The kind of place where people disappeared and were never found. Vivian parked 50 yards from the entrance, checked her weapons one final time, adjusted the body armor, took 3 deep breaths. Then she stepped out into the cold and walked toward the factory, toward Lucien, toward whatever ending waited for both of them in that darkness. And for the first time since that night in the warehouse, Vivian wasn't running away from the fire. She was walking straight into it. The factory entrance yawned open like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. Vivian's footsteps echoed off concrete as she walked through the rusted steel door, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. The weight of the body armor pressed against her ribs, and beneath it, the tracker Catherine had embedded felt like a brand burning into her skin. Inside, the factory was a maze of shadows and decay. Broken machinery lined the walls, massive industrial equipment that hadn't run in decades, covered in rust and graffiti. The ceiling stretched 30 feet overhead, supported by steel beams that groaned in the wind howling through shattered windows. Floodlights blazed to life, blinding her. Vivian raised her hand to shield her eyes, her other hand instinctively moving toward the pistol hidden beneath her jacket. Don't! The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Male, Russian, the same voice from the phone. Arms up. Walk forward slowly. Vivian raised both hands and walked toward the center of the factory floor. Her shoulders screamed in protest, the bullet wound still fresh enough that every movement sent lightning through her nerve endings. As her eyes adjusted to the lights, she saw them. 6 men arranged in a semicircle, all armed, all watching her with the same cold calculation predators used when studying prey. And in the center, tied to a steel chair with blood running down his face, Lucien. Vivian's breath caught. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him. His left eye was swollen shut. Blood crusted his split lip. His shirt was torn, exposing bruises that covered his ribs in shades of purple and black. But he was alive, breathing. And when he saw her, his one good eye went wide with something between relief and absolute fury. I told you not to come, he said through swollen lips. Since when do I listen to you? A man stepped out from behind Lucien, tall, heavy-set, wearing an expensive suit that looked wrong in a place like this. He had a scar running from his ear to his chin, and when he smiled, Vivian saw gold teeth. How touching, he said. Young love. Tragic, really, that it ends like this. You said you'd let him go if I came. I said many things. Most of them were lies. The man circled Lucian's chair slowly. My name is Alexei Volkov. I run the Petrova Syndicate's North American operations. Your father cost us $17 million and 14 men before we finally killed him. His daughter, I think, is worth at least that much in suffering. Vivian's hands clenched into fists. My father fought against traffickers, against people who sold children. If that cost you money, good. Alexei's smile vanished. Your father was a rat, a traitor. He pretended to be our friend, accepted our hospitality, and then fed everything to Lucian Vale. He grabbed Lucian's hair and yanked his head back. And this one, this arrogant boy playing at being king, he thought he could destroy us, thought he could clean up this city, make it better. He was right, Vivian said quietly. You're already dead, you just don't know it yet. Alexei laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Am I? Look around, girl, your rescue failed. Lucian's organization is scattered. Half his people are dead or in hiding. The other half have already sworn loyalty to Daniel Vale. He released Lucian's hair. We've won. This is just cleanup. One of the guards stepped forward and grabbed Vivian's arms. She didn't resist as he patted her down, finding the pistols immediately. He pulled them free and handed them to Alexei. Bulletproof vest too, the guard said. Good quality. Take it off. Vivian hesitated. The guard hit her, a backhand across the face that split her lip and sent her stumbling. She tasted blood. The vest. Now! With shaking hands, Vivian unzipped her jacket and pulled off the body armor. The guard took it and threw it aside. Now she stood in just her shirt and jeans, unarmed, facing 6 armed men and a Russian crime lord who'd already demonstrated he had no intention of keeping his word. Better, Alexei said. He walked to Vivian and tilted her chin up, studying her face like she was merchandise. Pretty, young, worth good money in the right markets. Too bad we don't have time for that. He released her and turned back to Lucian. I'm going to kill her in front of you, slowly, and you're going to watch every second of it. Then, when she's finally dead and you're broken completely, then I'll kill you too. He pulled a knife from his belt, long, curved, the blade catching the floodlights. Any last words? Lucien met Vivian's eyes across the space between them. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm sorry I brought you into this. I'm sorry I couldn't— Don't! Vivian interrupted. Her voice was steady, despite the terror flooding her veins. Don't apologize for being the only person who tried to save me. Lucien's jaw tightened. Something passed between them, an understanding maybe, or acceptance that they'd both made their choices and now had to live with the consequences, or die with them. Alexei raised the knife. Vivian closed her eyes. The explosion shattered the night. Not inside the factory. Outside. A massive detonation that shook the entire structure, sending dust and debris raining from the ceiling. The floodlights flickered and died, plunging everything into darkness. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Vivian dropped to the ground and rolled toward where she'd seen her weapons thrown. Her hands found the pistol in the darkness, and she came up firing blind toward where Alexei's men had been standing. The emergency lights kicked in, dim red glow that turned everything into a nightmare landscape of shadows and movement. One of Alexei's guards was down. Another was shooting toward the entrance where figures in tactical gear were pouring through. A third turned his weapon toward Vivian. She fired twice. He dropped. Someone grabbed her from behind. Vivian twisted, bringing her elbow up into soft tissue. The man grunted and loosened his grip just enough for her to spin and fire point blank into his chest. He fell. Vivian turned toward Lucien's chair. Empty. The restraints had been cut. Lucien was gone. Vivian! His voice came from her left. She ran toward it, keeping low as bullets tore through the air overhead. Her shoulders screamed with every movement, and she felt warm blood soaking through her shirt where the wound had reopened. She found Lucien behind a stack of wooden pallets, a pistol in his hand, taken from one of the guards probably. His face was still a mess of blood and bruises, but his eyes were sharp, focused. You came, he said. You're welcome. I told you not to— Shut up and shoot. They moved together, working their way toward the north wall where the tactical team was pushing in. Vivian recognized some of them, Lucien's people, the ones who'd survived the Providence trap. But there were others too, new faces, unfamiliar gear. Who are they? She shouted over the gunfire. Reinforcements, Daniel's enemies. Turns out my uncle made more people angry than just me. They reached the tactical team's position. A woman Vivian didn't recognize, late 30s, buzzed hair, carrying herself like military, grabbed Lucian's arm. We need to move. Volkov's people are calling in backup. We've got maybe 5 minutes before this place is swarming. Where's Alexei? Lucien asked. East exit. He ran when the shooting started. Lucien's expression went cold. Then that's where we're going. Lucien, you can barely stand. I didn't come here to run. He turned to Vivian. Go with them. Get out. No. Vivian, I said no. You don't get to protect me anymore. We finish this together or not at all. The woman looked between them, then swore under her breath. Fine, but if you both die, I'm not explaining it to Catherine. They moved as a unit through the factory, the tactical team clearing corners, Lucien and Vivian following close behind. Bodies littered the floor. Some Alexei's men, some theirs. Vivian tried not to look too closely. The east exit led to a loading dock overlooking a parking lot filled with shipping containers. 2 SUVs sat idling near the far end. Alexei was running toward them, flanked by 3 guards. There! Lucien raised his weapon and fired. The shot went wide. His hands were shaking too badly from exhaustion and injury. He tried to steady himself, but his legs buckled. Vivian caught him before he fell. I've got you, she said. I'm fine. You're not fine. You can barely stand. She looked at the tactical team. Cover us. They opened fire on the SUVs, forcing Alexei's guards to take cover behind the vehicles. Vivian half carried, half dragged Lucien down the loading dock stairs. Her shoulder felt like it was on fire. Blood ran down her arm, soaking into her sleeve. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. But she kept moving. They reached the parking lot just as one of the SUVs roared to life and peeled out, tires smoking. The tactical team focused their fire on it, shattering windows, puncturing tires. The vehicle swerved violently and crashed into a shipping container with a sound like thunder. The second SUV wasn't moving. Alexei and his remaining guard were pinned behind it, trapped. Lucien pulled free from Vivian's grip and stumbled forward, weapon raised. It's over, Alexei! Come out! Go to hell! Bullets answered him, wild, desperate shots that sparked off concrete. The tactical team returned fire, keeping Alexei pinned. Vivian moved up beside Lucien. Let them finish it, she said quietly. You don't have to... Yes, I do. His voice was raw. He tortured me for 3 days. Sent you that recording to draw you out. Planned to kill you in front of me. He looked at her, and Vivian saw something broken in his eyes. I need to end this. Not them. Me. Vivian understood. This wasn't about justice. Wasn't even about revenge. It was about control. About proving that despite everything, despite the torture, despite the failed trap, despite losing most of his organization, Lucien Vale was still dangerous. Still lethal. Still someone you didn't cross and survive. Together then, she said. They moved forward side by side. Alexei's guard broke first, standing up to fire, exposing himself for just a second. The tactical team cut him down instantly. Alexei stood alone now, his weapon empty, his expensive suit torn and blood-stained. Lucien and Vivian approached slowly. The tactical team held their fire, creating a circle around the scene but not interfering. This was personal. Alexei looked at them both, at Lucien's ruined face, at Vivian's bleeding shoulder, and laughed. You think this changes anything? The Petrova Syndicate is bigger than me. Kill me, and 10 more take my place. You've won nothing. Maybe, Lucien said, but you'll still be dead. He raised his weapon. Alexei's smile didn't waver. Do it. Pull the trigger. Prove you're just like us. Prove you're no better than your father, than your uncle, than every other monster who thought they could control this city. Lucien's hand trembled. His finger tightened on the trigger. But he didn't fire. Vivian watched him struggle with it, the need for vengeance warring with whatever was left of the man he'd been before all of this. The man who'd tried to be better, to make things cleaner. The man her father had believed in. Lucien, she said quietly. He looked at her. He's not worth it. He's not worth becoming what he says you are. He tortured me. He tried to kill you. I know. But if you do this, if you execute him while he's unarmed, you prove him right. You prove that there's no difference between you and him. Lucien's jaw worked. His weapon didn't lower. I need this, he whispered. I need to make him pay. Then let me. The words were out before Vivian fully processed them. But once spoken, she didn't take them back. Lucien stared at her. What? You said it yourself, in Providence, before everything went wrong. Vivian stepped forward, holding out her hand. You said this would end with me. So let it end with me. Vivian, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She met his eyes. My father died because of this man's organization. I was kidnapped, threatened, hunted. People died protecting me. And through all of it, I've been the victim, the one being saved, the one everyone else sacrifices for. She took the weapon from Lucien's unresisting hand. Not anymore. She turned to face Alexei. He was still smiling, still confident, still certain that she didn't have it in her. Go ahead, girl. Pull the trigger. See if you can live with it after. Vivian thought about her father, about the warehouse, about Marcus bleeding out in the mud, about Lucien's face when she'd walked into this factory knowing she might die, about every choice that had led her to this moment. She raised the weapon. I'll manage, she said, and pulled the trigger. The sound echoed across the parking lot like a period at the end of a sentence. Alexei dropped. Vivian lowered the weapon, her hand shaking now that it was done. She felt Lucien's arm around her shoulders, supporting her, or maybe supporting himself. She couldn't tell. The tactical team moved in, securing the area, checking bodies, calling for extraction vehicles. Vivian stood in the center of it all, blood on her hands, literally now, not just metaphorically, and felt something inside her shift. The girl from South Boston who'd walked home from the diner was completely gone. Whoever stood here now was someone different, someone harder, someone who'd looked into darkness and stepped directly into it without flinching. Someone who'd killed a man and felt nothing except relief that it was finally over. We need to move, the woman with the buzzed hair said. This place will be crawling with cops in 10 minutes. Lucien nodded. He tried to walk, but his legs gave out. Two of the tactical team caught him before he hit the ground. I'm fine, he muttered. Just need a minute. You need a hospital, Vivian said. Can't risk it. They'll be watching hospitals. Then we take him to Catherine, the woman said. She can patch him up enough to survive the trip to the secondary location. They loaded Lucien into one of the intact SUVs. Vivian climbed in beside him, her shoulder throbbing, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and shock. As they pulled away from the factory, sirens wailing in the distance, Lucien's hand found hers. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Yes, I did. How do you feel? Vivian looked at him, at his ruined face, at the blood drying on his shirt, at the man who'd tried so hard to protect her from exactly this moment. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Ask me tomorrow. And if tomorrow never comes? Then we die knowing we tried. Lucien's grip on her hand tightened. I love you, he said. I should have told you before. In the motel. In the cabin. Every moment we had when I thought I'd never get another chance. His voice cracked. I love you. And I'm sorry I dragged you into this hell. Vivian felt tears burn her eyes, but she blinked them back. I love you too, she whispered. And I'm not sorry. Not about any of it. They drove through the night toward whatever safety they could find, leaving behind bodies and blood and the burning wreckage of everything they'd tried to build. But they were alive, both of them, against all odds, and somehow that felt like winning. Masi. Catherine's safe house was a farmhouse 40 miles outside Hartford, surrounded by fields and forest and nothing else for miles. They arrived just before dawn, the sky turning gray at the edges. Catherine took one look at Lucien and started barking orders. Get him on the table. I need hot water, clean towels, and the medical kit from the basement. Move. The tactical team obeyed without question. Within minutes, Lucien was laid out on the kitchen table, his shirt cut away, Catherine examining his injuries with practiced efficiency. Broken ribs, possible internal bleeding, severe bruising, lacerations that need stitches. She looked up at the woman with buzzed hair. Elena, I need you to hold him down. This is going to hurt. Elena nodded and positioned herself at Lucien's shoulders. Lucien tried to protest, but Catherine ignored him. Vivian, your shoulder. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your shirt. Sit down. I'll deal with you after I stabilize him. Vivian sat in a chair against the wall and watched Catherine work. The older woman moved with surgical precision, cleaning wounds, stitching lacerations, wrapping ribs. Lucien gritted his teeth through most of it, only crying out when Catherine had to reset what turned out to be 2 broken ribs. After an hour, Catherine stepped back. He'll live. Barely. He needs rest. Real rest. No moving for at least a week. Can't do that, Lucian said through swollen lips. Daniel's still out there. The Petrova Syndicate just lost their North American operations director, Elena interrupted. We've been monitoring communications. They're in chaos, fighting internally over who takes over. And Daniel? Elena's expression hardened. That's the problem. He's disappeared. Went underground the moment news broke about Providence. We've got people looking, but so far, nothing. Lucian tried to sit up. Catherine pushed him back down. You're not going anywhere, not in your condition. Daniel won't wait. He'll regroup, consolidate power, come after us again. Then we'll be ready. Elena pulled up a chair and sat beside the table. Lucien, you need to understand something. Your organization isn't gone. It's fractured, yes, scattered. But the people still loyal to you, they're ready to fight. We've been coordinating, building alliances. Half the crime families in Boston are waiting for your word to move against Daniel. Why would they wait for me? I failed, lost Providence, lost the mansion, got my people killed. Because you're still Lucian Vale, because your father built something that lasted 20 years, and you've maintained it for 7 more. Because even broken and bleeding, you're more dangerous than Daniel will ever be. Elena leaned forward. And because they know what happens if Daniel takes over completely. He'll sell them all to the Russians to consolidate power. You won't. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Time to heal, then a plan. Then your presence to legitimize the move against Daniel. Elena stood. Rest. Let us handle the preparation. When you're ready, we strike. Catherine finally turned to Vivian. Your turn. Shirt off. Vivian peeled off her blood-soaked shirt carefully. The bandage on her shoulder was completely saturated, dark red spreading across the white gauze. Catherine cut it away and examined the wound. Reopened. Needs fresh stitches. You're lucky you didn't do permanent damage running around like that. I didn't have much choice. No, I suppose you didn't. Catherine began cleaning the wound. You killed Alexei Volkov. It wasn't a question. Yes. How do you feel about that? Vivian thought about it while Catherine worked. I thought I'd feel guilty, horrified, something. She met Catherine's eyes. But I don't. I just feel tired. That's normal. The guilt comes later, usually when you least expect it. Catherine started stitching. But sometimes it doesn't come at all. Some people are built for this world. They do what needs to be done and move forward without looking back. Is that what I am now? I don't know. Are you? Vivian looked across the room at Lucien, who was finally resting, his breathing slow and steady. She thought about everything she'd survived in the last 3 weeks, everything she'd done, everything she'd become. I think so, she said quietly. I think the person I was before died in that warehouse. And whoever's left, she's not going back. Catherine tied off the final stitch and applied fresh bandages. Then welcome to the family, she said. For better or worse. Lucien slept for 18 hours straight. Vivian kept watch from a chair beside the couch where they'd moved him after Catherine finished treatment. She dozed occasionally but never fully slept, startling awake at every sound. Elena and the tactical team maintained perimeter security. Catherine monitored police scanners and news reports. The factory firefight had made headlines. Multiple casualties, suspected gang violence, no arrests yet. The Petrova Syndicate was staying quiet. Daniel Vale was still missing. And Vivian sat in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, waiting for the other shoe to drop. When Lucien finally woke, the sun was setting outside the windows, painting everything in shades of orange and red. He tried to sit up immediately. Vivian gently pushed him back down. Easy, you're still healing. How long? Almost a full day, Lucien swore quietly. We don't have that kind of time. Catherine said you needed rest. Real rest. Catherine isn't the one with a psychotic uncle hunting her. No, but she's the one who put you back together. So maybe listen to her. Lucien finally focused on Vivian's face. You look awful. You're one to talk. He almost smiled. Then his expression sobered. You killed Alexei. Yes. I shouldn't have let you. You didn't let me. I chose. Vivian's hand found his, and I'd do it again. That's what I'm afraid of. Why? Lucien's gray eyes held hers. Because once you cross that line, once you kill someone who can't fight back, it changes you. And I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to stay clean, untouched by all of this. I was never clean. The moment your world touched mine, I was already changed. Killing Alexei just made it permanent. Do you regret it? Vivian thought carefully before answering. No. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the world is built in a way that makes killing the only solution sometimes. But I don't regret pulling that trigger. Lucien pulled her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Then we're both damned. Probably. Think there's any chance for us? After all of this? Vivian looked around the safe house, at the armed guards outside, at Catherine cleaning weapons at the kitchen table, at Elena coordinating with crime families over encrypted phones to plan an attack on Lucien's own uncle. I think, she said slowly, that chance was never really part of the equation. We're here. We're alive. And we're choosing each other despite everything that says we shouldn't. If that's not enough, if we need more than that, then we were doomed from the start. Pretty bleak outlook. Pretty bleak world. Lucien pulled her down until her forehead rested against his. When this is over, when Daniel's gone and the Petrova Syndicate is finished and we've survived everything they can throw at us, I want to take you somewhere. Somewhere far from Boston. Somewhere you can decide who you want to be without all of this weighing on you. And if I decide I want to stay in this world with you, then we build something better. Something that doesn't require constant violence to maintain. Something worth protecting instead of just surviving. You really think that's possible? I don't know, but I'm willing to try if you are. Vivian kissed him, careful of his split lip, mindful of his broken ribs, but fierce enough to communicate everything words couldn't. When they broke apart, Elena was standing in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got movement. Lucien sat up despite Vivian's protest. What kind of movement? Daniel. He just surfaced, made contact with 3 of the families still sitting on the fence. Elena's expression was grim. He's offering them everything: territory, protection, partnership with the Petrova Syndicate remnants. He's trying to consolidate before you can recover. How long? He's called a meeting, tomorrow night, neutral location, wants all the family heads to attend and hear his proposal. Lucien's jaw tightened. He's moving faster than I expected. He knows you're injured, knows you're weak. He's trying to lock down power while you can't stop him. Then we don't wait. Lucien stood, slowly, painfully, but he stood. We go to that meeting, we make our case, and we end this before Daniel has a chance to turn everyone against us. You can barely stand, Vivian said. How are you going to? I'll manage. He looked at Elena. What's the location? Waterfront warehouse, South Boston. Same area where we pulled Vivian from that first night. Lucien's expression went cold. He chose that deliberately, wants to remind everyone that this is where it all started, where I failed to protect her the first time. Probably. Then we turn it around. We show them that despite everything, despite the torture, despite Providence, despite losing the mansion, we're still standing, still fighting. He turned to Vivian, and we do it together. Vivian felt ice spread through her chest. You want me there, at the meeting. Yes. Why? Because you're proof that I'm not just surviving. I'm protecting what matters. Because every family there knows your story by now, knows what you've been through. And seeing you standing beside me, alive and unbroken, sends a message Daniel can't counter. What message? Lucien's hand cupped her face. That Lucien Vale keeps his promises, no matter the cost. Elena cleared her throat. Meeting's at midnight tomorrow. That gives us about 28 hours to prepare. I'll coordinate with our people. Make sure we have backup positioned around the perimeter. Security will be tight, Lucien said. Daniel will have his own people there, probably Russians too. Then we bring enough firepower to level the building if necessary. No. We go in clean, show of good faith. If we roll in armed to the teeth, we prove Daniel's point that I'm unstable, dangerous. You're dangerous. Yes? But I'm controlled, measured. That's the difference between me and him. Elena didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Your call, but I'm putting snipers on every rooftop within range, just in case. After Elena left, Vivian helped Lucien back to the couch. He moved like every step hurt. which it probably did. "This is insane," she said. "You can barely walk. How are you going to stand in front of a room full of crime bosses and convince them to follow you?" "The same way I've been doing it for 7 years, by being scarier than the alternative." "And if that doesn't work?" Lucian's smile was sharp and cold. "Then we fight our way out and burn the whole thing down on our way." Vivian realized he wasn't joking. "You'd really do that? Start a war you might not win just to keep Daniel from taking over?" Without hesitation. He met her eyes. "Because if Daniel wins, everything my father built, everything I fought to maintain, becomes a tool for the Petrova Syndicate. Boston turns into a trafficking hub. Thousands of lives get destroyed, and your father's sacrifice means nothing. So we go to war. Vivian sat beside him, her hand in his, and watched the sun finish setting outside the windows. 28 hours until the meeting. 28 hours until everything either came together or fell completely apart. 28 hours to prepare for the fight that would determine whether they survived this or died trying. She looked at Lucien, at his ruined face, at the determination burning in his eyes despite the pain clearly written across every feature. "If we do this," she said quietly, "if we walk into that warehouse and face down your uncle and whoever else he's convinced to stand with him, we can't lose. Because if we lose, we die. Both of us." "I know. So we need a plan. A real one. Not just showing up and hoping your reputation carries the day." Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You're right. Elena, Catherine, get in here." They spent the next 6 hours planning. Every detail, every contingency, every possible way it could go wrong, and what they'd do to survive it. By the time they finished, Vivian's head was spinning with information, exit points, backup signals, weapons placements, allies they could count on, and enemies who'd definitely try to kill them. But she also felt something she hadn't felt since the warehouse. Hope. Not much. Just enough. Enough to believe they might actually survive this. Enough to walk into that meeting tomorrow and face whatever came next. Enough to stand beside Lucien, Ian Vale, and Truchy and prove that they were both exactly as dangerous as everyone feared. And if Daniel Vale and the Petrova Syndicate wanted a war, then they'd brought it to exactly the right people. The next night, as Vivian dressed in dark clothes and checked the small pistol Catherine had insisted she carry, she caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The girl staring back at her was unrecognizable from the one who'd walked home from Rosie's diner 3 weeks ago. This girl had scars, had blood on her hands, had killed a man and slept fine afterward. This girl was hard where she'd been soft, cold where she'd been warm, dangerous where she'd been harmless. And when Lucien appeared in the doorway behind her, leaning against the frame because standing upright still hurt too much, she saw the same recognition in his eyes. "Ready?" he asked. Vivian turned to face him. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the only kind of courage that matters." They walked out together into the cold night air, into the waiting vehicles, into whatever ending the universe had written for them. And Vivian realized with absolute certainty that she wouldn't trade this moment, this choice, this path, this dangerous broken man beside her, for anything. Not safety, not normalcy, not even the life she'd lost 3 weeks ago. This was who she was now. And tomorrow night, everyone would know it. The warehouse smelled like salt water and rust and decades of secrets buried in concrete. Vivian stood beside Lucien in the shadows near the entrance, watching as crime bosses filtered in through the main doors. She recognized some of them from intelligence reports Elena had shown her: the Castellano family from East Boston, the Korean syndicate that controlled Chinatown, the Irish crew that ran Southie. Men and women who'd built empires on blood and intimidation, who'd survived wars and betrayals and federal investigations, all of them watching Lucien with varying degrees of calculation. He'd insisted on standing despite the pain clearly etched into every line of his body. Catherine had wrapped his ribs tight enough to support him, and he'd taken enough painkillers to function without collapsing. But Vivian could see the cost in the way his jaw clenched, the way his hand trembled slightly before he forced it still. 15 families, Elena murmured from behind them. That's everyone who matters in this city, plus Daniel's people. Where is he? Lucien asked. Center of the warehouse. Waiting for you. Lucien nodded once, then stepped out of the shadows. The warehouse went quiet. Every eye turned toward them as Lucien walked slowly into the space, Vivian at his side. She felt their stares like physical weight, judging, assessing, measuring whether the legendary Lucien Vale was as dangerous as his reputation suggested, or just another broken man pretending to be strong. Daniel stood in the center beneath harsh industrial lights, wearing an expensive suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wasn't alone. 4 men flanked him, Russians by the look of them, Petrova Syndicate remnants looking for new leadership. "Nephew," Daniel said warmly, "I'm so glad you could make it. I wasn't sure you'd be mobile yet after your recent difficulties. I heal fast." Apparently, Daniel's gaze shifted to Vivian. "And Miss Mercer, still alive. How remarkable. You're quite resilient for someone so young." Vivian didn't respond, just met his eyes with the same cold calculation he was showing her. Daniel gestured to the assembled families. "I called this meeting because Boston needs leadership. Stable leadership. Not the chaos we've experienced these last few weeks." He turned slowly, addressing the room. "Lucien Vale has done his best. I won't deny that. But his best isn't good enough anymore. He's made enemies we can't afford. Lost territory we can't recover. Got good people killed chasing vendettas instead of protecting profits. And you do better?" The question came from Marco Castellano, 60 years old, built like a boxer, with eyes that had seen everything twice. "I already am doing better. The Petrova Syndicate and I have reached an understanding. They'll respect our territories, we'll respect theirs. No more war, no more bloodshed, just business." "At what cost?" Lucien's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. "What did you trade them, Daniel? What did you promise that makes you confident enough to stand here and claim my father's legacy?" Daniel's smile widened. "I promised them exactly what they wanted. Peace, cooperation, and your head on a plate." The Russians behind Daniel shifted, hands moving toward weapons. Elena's people moved in response, creating a standoff that could turn into a massacre in seconds. "Everyone calm down." This from Sun-hee Park, head of the Korean syndicate. She stepped forward, small and elegant and absolutely fearless. "We didn't come here to start a war. We came for answers. So let's have them." She looked at Lucien. "You nearly died cleaning up trafficking operations the Petrova Syndicate ran through our city. You lost your home, lost your people. For what? Some idealistic notion that we can be better than we are?" "For the city my father wanted to build," Lucien said quietly. "One where we control vice and violence instead of letting it control us. Where we profit without destroying lives. Where we're criminals, yes, but not monsters. Noble, but impractical." Sun-hee turned to Daniel. "And you? What's your vision?" "Profit," Daniel said simply. "Maximum return, minimum exposure. We partner with whoever pays best. We don't ask questions about how they make their money. We just take our cut and let them operate." "That includes trafficking?" Marco asked. "Drugs that kill kids? Protection rackets that bleed honest businesses dry?" "It includes whatever generates revenue." The warehouse erupted in shouting, some families agreeing with Daniel's pragmatism, others defending Lucien's approach. Voices rising, accusations flying, old grievances surfacing. Vivian watched Lucien's face as his father's legacy tore itself apart in front of him. Then she stepped forward. "May I say something?" The shouting died. Everyone turned to look at her, this 19-year-old girl who had no business being in a room full of crime lords. "3 weeks ago," Vivian said, her voice steady and clear, "I was working at a diner near the harbor. My biggest concern was making rent. Then the Petrova Syndicate kidnapped me because my father helped Lucien Vale dismantle their trafficking operations." She walked slowly into the center of the space, feeling every eye on her. "They were going to sell me. Ship me overseas where I'd disappear and no one would ever find me. I would have been one of hundreds, maybe thousands. Girls whose lives meant nothing to men who measured value only in dollars." She stopped directly between Lucien and Daniel. "Lucien saved me, not because I could pay him, not because it benefited him strategically. He saved me because it was the right thing to do, because my father asked him to, because despite everything he is and everything he's done, he still believes some things are worth fighting for even when they cost you everything." She turned to face Daniel. "You want to partner with the Petrova Syndicate? Fine. But understand what that means. It means looking the other way while children disappear. It means profiting from suffering. It means becoming exactly the kind of monster that decent people fear when they walk home alone at night. Spare me the morality lecture, Daniel said. You killed Alexei Volkov, shot him while he was unarmed, so don't pretend you're better than any of us. I don't pretend that. I know what I am now. I know what I've become. Vivian's voice didn't waver. But I also know why I pulled that trigger. It wasn't for profit. It wasn't for power. It was because he represented everything that should be burned out of this world. And if that makes me a monster too, then at least I'm a monster with a conscience. She looked around the warehouse at the assembled families. You all have a choice. Follow Daniel and maximize profit regardless of the cost. Or follow Lucien and try to be something slightly less awful than the alternative. Neither option is clean, neither makes you heroes, but one of them lets you sleep at night knowing you drew a line somewhere. Silence fell. Then Marco Castellano spoke. The girl's got a point. My grandfather built our family on numbers and unions. Corruption, sure. Violence when necessary. But we never trafficked people. Never sold drugs to kids. There were lines even he wouldn't cross. Lines are expensive, Daniel said. They limit profit margins. Maybe. But they also define who we are. Marco looked at Lucien. Your father understood that. Kept this city controlled but not destroyed. Can you do the same? Lucien straightened despite the pain it clearly caused. I can, and I will. But not if you choose Daniel. Not if you decide profit matters more than everything else. His gray eyes swept the room. My father used to say that criminals who forget they're still human become something worse than police or feds could ever stop. They become the kind of evil that eats cities from the inside, that destroys everything they touch. He turned to Daniel. You want this? You want to lead Boston down that path? Then you'll have to go through me first. Daniel's smile finally disappeared. I was hoping to avoid bloodshed, but if you insist, I insist. The Russians behind Daniel drew their weapons. Elena's team responded instantly. The crime families scattered, taking cover behind shipping containers and equipment, trying to get out of the line of fire. Vivian felt Lucien's hand on her arm, pulling her down behind a concrete pillar as gunfire erupted. The warehouse became chaos. Bullets sparked off metal, ricocheted off concrete. Vivian pressed herself flat against the pillar, her hand finding the pistol Catherine had given her. Across the space, she saw Daniel running toward the back exit, his Russians covering his retreat. Lucien tried to stand. His legs buckled. Vivian caught him before he fell. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're going to get yourself killed. Then help me. She looked at him, at this stubborn, broken, impossibly dangerous man who refused to stay down no matter what the universe threw at him, and made her choice. Can you shoot? Yes. Then stay here. Cover our exit. She pulled out her pistol. I'm getting Daniel. Vivian. But she was already moving, using the chaos as cover, weaving between shipping containers toward the back of the warehouse where Daniel had disappeared. She found him at the loading dock, trying to hotwire a truck. His Russians were gone. Dead or fled, she couldn't tell. He was alone. He saw her and froze. You, he said. Of course it's you. The tragic orphan who thinks she's a hero. I don't think I'm a hero. I think I'm someone who's tired of running. Vivian raised her weapon. Daniel's hand moved toward his jacket. Don't, she said quietly. I've already killed one person this week. Adding another won't keep me up at night. His hand stopped. You really think Lucien can hold this city? He's broken, weak, sentimental. He's everything your brother was. Everything you'll never be. My brother was a fool. He built an empire and then tried to clean it up like it was possible to have power without corruption, like you could control vice without becoming part of it. Daniel's expression twisted with decades of bitterness. I watched him pour his life into this city and die for it, assassinated by the very people he was trying to help. And for what? So his son could inherit everything while I got scraps? So that's what this is about, jealousy. This is about justice, about taking what should have been mine from the beginning. Vivian heard footsteps behind her. Lucien appeared, leaning heavily against the doorframe, weapon raised. Elena and two of her team followed. It's over, Daniel, Lucien said. The families are deciding right now, and when they come out here, you'll answer for everything you've done. Will I? Daniel laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You think they'll choose you?
Half of them hate you for costing them money. The other half are terrified you'll get them all killed chasing your father's impossible dream. Maybe, but they hate traitors more than they fear change. As if summoned, the families began emerging from the warehouse. Marco first, then Sun-hee, then the others. They formed a loose semicircle around the loading dock, watching, waiting. Marco stepped forward.
We voted, unanimously. Daniel's expression shifted to something almost hopeful. Daniel Vale, Marco continued, his voice hard as stone, you're guilty of betraying your family, your organization, and every code we live by, partnering with our enemies, selling out your own nephew, enabling traffickers to operate in our city. The hope on Daniel's face died. The sentence is exile. You leave Boston tonight. You don't come back. If we see you again, you die. No trial, no appeal, just death. Exile, Daniel repeated slowly. After everything I've done? Everything I've built? You've built nothing, Lucian said quietly. You've only torn down what better men created. Daniel's hand shot toward his jacket. Vivian fired without thinking. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. His weapon clattered to the concrete, unfired. He collapsed against the truck, clutching the wound, blood streaming between his fingers. Elena's team moved in, securing him, checking for other weapons. Lucien limped forward until he stood over his uncle. You could have been great, he said. My father trusted you, I trusted you. We would have given you anything except the one thing you wanted most. Power, Daniel spat. The throne that should have been mine. No, recognition, respect, the acknowledgement that you mattered. Lucien crouched down, his face inches from Daniel's. But you couldn't wait, couldn't earn it. So you tried to steal it, and now you have nothing. He stood and nodded to Elena. Get him out of my city. I don't care where he goes. Just make sure he never comes back. Elena's team dragged Daniel away. He was shouting, threats, curses, promises of revenge, but his voice faded as they hauled him toward a waiting vehicle. The crime families dispersed slowly, some offering nods of respect to Lucien, others simply leaving in silence. Sun-hee stopped beside him briefly. Your father would be proud, or horrified, possibly both. Then she too was gone, and Lucien and Vivian stood alone on the loading dock while dawn broke over Boston Harbor. Lucien finally let himself collapse. Vivian caught him, lowering them both to the concrete. Is it over? She asked quietly. For now. His breathing was labored. Until the next person decides they want what I have. Until the next crisis. Until the next war. That's not an answer. It's the only answer this world has. They sat together watching the sun rise over the city, this broken, beautiful, terrible place that had tried to destroy them both and failed. After a long silence, Lucien spoke again. I meant what I said, about taking you somewhere, away from all of this. When? Soon as I can walk without feeling like my ribs are stabbing my lungs. Vivian almost smiled. Where would we go? Anywhere. Nowhere. Does it matter? She thought about it. No, she decided. It doesn't matter, as long as we go together. Together, Lucien repeated. His hand found hers. I like the sound of that. 3 months later, Vivian stood in a glass penthouse overlooking downtown Boston. The apartment was nothing like the mansion, smaller, more modern, all clean lines and minimalist furniture. But the view was spectacular. The entire city spread out below like a living map of everything they'd survived. Lucien emerged from the bedroom, moving easier now. His ribs had healed. The bruises had faded. But the scars remained, visible and invisible, reminders of how close they'd come to losing everything. Catherine called, he said. Final security sweep is complete. The penthouse is clean. And the organization? Stable. Marco's handling East Boston. Sun-hee's expanded into territory the Petrova Syndicate abandoned. The Irish crew in Southie wants to discuss a partnership. He crossed to stand beside her at the window. We're rebuilding, slowly. But it's happening. Any word on Daniel? He's in Miami, working for a cartel that doesn't know his history yet. When they figure it out, Lucien shrugged. That's his problem, not ours. Vivian watched cars move through streets far below, people going about their lives completely unaware of what had happened in warehouses and factories and safe houses to keep this city from tearing itself apart. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Any of it?" "Regret what?" "Saving me. Starting this whole thing, destroying your uncle, all the people who died because you kept a promise to my father." Lucien was quiet for a long moment. "I regret the people who died. I regret that the world is built in a way that makes violence the only language some people understand. I regret that you had to kill someone and lose whatever innocence you had left." He turned to face her. "But I don't regret saving you, and I don't regret keeping my promise." "Even though it cost you everything?" "It didn't cost me everything. It cost me the version of myself I was pretending to be, the untouchable crime lord who didn't care about anyone, who could make decisions based purely on strategy and profit." His hand cupped her face. "You made me human again. Vulnerable. Weak in ways my enemies can exploit. And I'm grateful for it. That's possibly the strangest thing anyone's ever been grateful for. Welcome to my world." Vivian kissed him, slow, gentle, completely different from the desperate kisses they'd shared in cheap motels and burning warehouses. This kiss tasted like survival, like hope, like the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could build something that lasted longer than the next crisis. When they broke apart, Lucien pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I have something for you." "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a single document. It took Vivian a moment to understand what she was reading. Then her breath caught. "This is a trust fund, in my name. Enough to pay for college, any school you want, any degree. Whatever you decide you want to be now that you're not working at a diner." "Lucien, I can't." "Yes, you can. Your father wanted you to have opportunities. He died trying to give you a chance at a better life. This is me making sure that happens." Vivian stared at the document, at the numbers that represented more money than she'd ever imagined having, at the future Lucien was offering her, one where she could choose to walk away from this world completely if she wanted. "What if I don't want to leave?" she asked quietly. "Then you don't have to, but you should have the option. You should be able to choose this life instead of being trapped in it." "And if I choose to stay, to be part of what you're building?" Lucien's expression was carefully neutral. "Then I teach you everything I know. I make you dangerous enough that no one will ever threaten you again. And we build something together, something that honors what your father died for and what my father tried to create. A criminal empire with a conscience. Something like that." Vivian looked at the trust fund document again, at the escape route Lucien was offering, at the life she could have if she wanted it badly enough. Then she set it on the table. "I'll keep it. For emergencies. For options." She met his eyes. "But I'm not leaving. Not now. Maybe not ever." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Because this world tried to destroy me and I'm still here. Because you kept a promise when you could have walked away. Because my father believed something here was worth dying for, and I want to understand what it was." She moved to stand in front of him, her hands on his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palms. "And because I love you, and I'm not walking away from that just because it's complicated and dangerous and probably going to get us both killed eventually." Lucien pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "We're both insane," he whispered. "Probably. This won't be easy. There will be more Daniels, more Alexeys, more people who want to tear down what we're trying to build." "I know. You'll see things, do things, become things you never imagined when you were walking home from that diner." "I already have." Lucien pulled back just enough to look at her. "Then welcome to the Empire, Vivian Mercer. For better or worse." "For better or worse," she repeated. They stood together in the penthouse, surrounded by glass and steel and the city that had tried to destroy them, and Vivian realized something profound. She wasn't the victim anymore, wasn't the girl who needed saving, wasn't the tragic orphan whose father died keeping secrets. She was Vivian Mercer, survivor, fighter, partner to a crime lord, and someone who'd looked into darkness and stepped into it willingly because sometimes the only way to change the world was from the inside. Her father had understood that, had spent 6 years working in shadows to dismantle evil while pretending to be a harmless professor, had died poisoned and alone so his daughter could have a chance at something better. And now Vivian was honoring that sacrifice by choosing to continue his work, by standing beside Lucien and trying to make this city slightly less terrible than it had been yesterday. It wasn't heroic, wasn't clean, wasn't anything like the future she'd imagined for herself 3 months ago. But it was real, and it was hers, and that was enough. 6 months after that, Vivian sat in a lecture hall at Boston University, the same university where her father had taught for 22 years. She was enrolled part-time, studying criminal justice and political science. The irony wasn't lost on her. By day, she learned about the legal system and how it was supposed to work. By night, she helped Lucien navigate the illegal system that actually controlled the city. The duality was exhausting, exhilarating, impossible to explain to the other students who had no idea the girl sitting in the back row had killed a man and helped orchestrate the exile of a crime boss. After class, she walked across campus to the building where her father had maintained an office. The university had cleared it out months ago, but Vivian still came here sometimes. Still stood outside the door and tried to feel some connection to the man who'd kept so many secrets. "You look lost." Vivian turned. An older professor stood there, 60s, gray beard, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm fine. Just remembering someone." "Elliot Mercer." The professor nodded toward the door. "This was his office. You're his daughter." Vivian tensed. Not many people knew that. She'd changed her last name legally, buried her connection to her father as deep as possible. "How did you know?" "You have his eyes and his stubborn chin." The professor smiled sadly. "He was a good man, a brilliant teacher. I miss having him across the hall." "Did you know him well?" "Well enough to know he was more than he appeared to be. He used to work late, take phone calls he'd step outside for, leave campus at odd hours." The professor studied Vivian carefully. "I never asked questions, but I suspected he was trying to do good in a world that didn't always reward it." Vivian felt her throat tighten. "He was. Then I hope he succeeded. And I hope you're following in his footsteps, whatever form that takes." The professor walked away, leaving Vivian alone in the hallway with ghosts and memories and questions she'd never get to ask. That night, she told Lucien about the encounter. They were in his office, the nerve center of his rebuilt organization, filled with encrypted computers and secure phones and maps of Boston, marked with territories and assets. "Your father's colleague knew," Lucien said, "or at least suspected, but he never told anyone, never reported it. Because some people understand that the world isn't black and white, that sometimes the only way to fight evil is by working alongside people who exist in gray areas." Lucien looked up from the reports he was reading. "Your father found one of those people, an ally who asked no questions and offered no judgment. Do you have people like that?" "A few. Marco, Sun-Hee, Catherine." He paused. "You." Vivian crossed the room and sat on the edge of his desk. "I'm not non-judgmental. I judge you constantly. And yet you're still here. And yet I'm still here." She picked up one of the reports. Intelligence on a new trafficking operation trying to establish itself in Boston. Her father's old enemy taking a new form. "What are we doing about this?" "Shutting it down. Quietly. Before it becomes the kind of problem that requires public violence." "Need help?" Lucien studied her for a long moment. "Yes. But Vivian, once you cross that line, once you become part of operations instead of just aware of them, there's no going back. I crossed that line when I killed Alexei. This is just making it official." "You're sure?" She thought about her father, about the warehouse, about every choice that had led her to this moment. "I'm sure. Because someone has to fight this. Someone has to stand between predators and prey. And if that someone is me, if that's who I've become, then I'd rather do it well than pretend I'm something I'm not." Lucien stood and kissed her forehead gently. "Your father would be proud and terrified. Probably both. That seems to be a theme with us." They worked late into the night, planning the operation that would dismantle the trafficking network before it could establish roots. It was delicate work, surgical precision required, no collateral damage, no attention from police or feds. The kind of work Vivian's father had done for 6 years, the kind of work she was choosing to continue. And as dawn broke over Boston for the 1,000th time since that night in the warehouse, Vivian realized something profound. She'd never been rescued from the underworld. She'd just learned how to survive there, how to thrive there, how to become someone who could walk through fire and come out the other side stronger instead of destroyed. Lucian Vale had kept his promise, had protected her, had given her choices when she had none. But in the end, the person who'd saved Vivian Mercer was Vivian herself, by refusing to break, by choosing to fight, by accepting that sometimes the only way to honor the dead was by becoming someone they'd barely recognize. And when the city woke up that morning, all 800,000 people going about their lives, completely unaware of the battles fought in shadows to keep them safe, Vivian stood beside Lucian at the penthouse window and felt something close to peace. Not because the world was good. It wasn't. Not because they were heroes. They weren't. But because they'd found each other in the darkness and decided that was enough. That together they could be slightly less terrible than they were apart. That maybe, just maybe, that was all anyone could ask for. The city glowed beneath them as the sun climbed higher. Somewhere out there, new threats were gathering. New enemies were planning. New wars were waiting to be fought. But Vivian wasn't afraid anymore. She'd walked through hell and survived. And now hell would have to survive her.